Chapter 671. Shi Mengwan had already made more than half of the dumplings. She was very quick at wrapping dumplings. Strangely, after so many years, she had never learned how to roll dumpling wrappers. He never would. At home, Mother Shi was the one who rolled the dough. She only needed to wrap it. She was afraid of trouble when she went out, not to mention that there were ready-made dumpling skins for sale now. You're back? Dinner will be ready soon. The kitchen was very small, so Shi Mengwan made dumplings on the dining table. The stuffing was mixed in a large basin, and 2/3 of it had already been wrapped up. Zhang Haoze stepped forward and watched Shi Mengwan's movements. She had a pair of extremely beautiful hands. Her fingers were slender and smooth. She wrapped the dumplings very quickly and looked very pleasing to the eye. Zhang Haoze pulled out the chair in front of the dining table and sat there watching Shi Mengwan make dumplings. Shi Mengwan felt uncomfortable under his gaze, and her hands stopped moving for a moment. What happened? Seeing that Zhang Haoze didn't speak, she pouted and said, "Will you? Do you need help?" "I won't." Those 3 words were spoken in a low voice. Shi Mengwan knew that he wouldn't, so she stopped looking at him. She quickly wrapped the dumplings and put them away. Then he went into the kitchen to boil water. When the water boiled, she found the cured meat and sausages that Mother Shi had asked her to bring to Lin City before she came back. She calculated the portions, cut them, and then stir-fried 2 dishes. When she took the dishes out of the pot, she found that Zhang Haoze had been staring at her at the door. The corners of Shi Mengwan's lips curled up slightly. "Wait a minute, the dumplings will be ready soon." As she spoke, she handed one of the dishes to Zhang Haoze. "Please take it out." Zhang Haoze didn't expect her to ask him to serve the dishes. He stared at the dishes in her hand for a few seconds and finally reached out his hand. "There's also this." Shi Mengwan smiled and glanced at the processing table. Zhang Haoze placed the dishes on the table outside. Shi Mengwan looked at the dumplings. They were ready to be cooked. She scooped out the dumplings and brought them to the dining table outside. "All right, bring 2 bowls over." Zhang Haoze had already sat down. Because of Shi Mengwan's words, he glanced at her and finally got up to get the bowl. Shi Mengwan had a faint smile in her eyes. Some things required a sense of participation. This was her home. Zhang Haoze was now her man. She had to let him feel a sense of participation. There were many things that required 2 people to do together in order to improve their relationship. She hoped that their relationship could be enhanced outside of the bed, not just in bed every time they had an exchange of feelings. Seeing Zhang Haoze sit down with the bowl, Shi Mengwan put the dumplings into his bowl. "How about trying it?" Zhang Haoze tasted one, looked up at her, and nodded. Shi Mengwan's eyes turned red because of his reaction. However, this time, she controlled herself and didn't let herself lose her composure. She lowered her head and ate the dumplings quietly. "My mom made this. So is this." Actually, when she was with dear brother back then, Shi Mengwan had also thought of getting some New Year's goods. But at that time, she was really too young to know. She couldn't now either, but she could let him taste her mother's cooking. Shi Mengwan made a lot of dumplings. It's only half cooked. She put the rest in the freezer so that she could cook it the next time she wanted to eat it. And the food she cooked all went into Zhang Haoze's stomach. She really couldn't help but sigh. His appetite was really good. After dinner, Shi Mengwan cleaned up the kitchen. When she came out, Zhang Haoze pulled her to sit down on the sofa. His hand was on her waist and he held her in his arms. Shi Mengwan felt a little uncomfortable. She was too full, and Zhang Haoze's actions made her feel dangerous. "Zhang Haoze, how about we go for a walk?" She grabbed his hand away. Shi Mengwan really didn't want to do such exercise right after dinner. It was too tiring. "We're too full tonight. We should go for a walk to digest our food, don't you think?" Zhang Haoze's hand was still on her waist. Shi Mengwan wasn't confident that he would agree to her request, but no matter what, she had to give it a try. "Let's go." "Go for a walk?" Zhang Haoze stood up. Shi Mengwan was happy. She went to get her coat. She had already gone out today, and her coat was hanging at the entrance. She took the keys and phone and put them in her pocket. She looked at Zhang Haoze with shining eyes. After going downstairs, Shi Mengwan felt a little regretful. The sun was out during the day, and the temperature in Lin City was still okay. She could still tolerate it. But it was night now, and Lin City was near the sea. The wind was strong, and the temperature was low. A gust of wind blew over, and Shi Mengwan couldn't take it anymore. It's so cold. Why was it so cold? She seemed to have heard the weather forecast that it would cool down again, but she didn't expect it to be so cold. She reached out and rubbed her palms. Just as she was about to put her hand back into her pocket, Jean Hauser reached out to hold her hand and put her hand into his pocket. His hand was very big, and it tightly wrapped around hers. Shi Mengwan's mind flashed for a moment. Looking at Jean Hauser's deep profile, she bit her lip and couldn't help but feel a trace of joy in her heart. She knew that her dear brother was like this. She moved her face closer to Jean Hauser's arm and rubbed it. The smile on Shi Mengwan's face became brighter. Jean Hauser felt her movements and turned to look at her. He didn't say much, but the expression on his face became much gentler. The next day, it rained in Lin City. When Jean Hauser left the company, he received a call from Qin Yongchang saying that something had happened to Qin Feifei. When Jean Hauser rushed back to the Qin family, the doctor had just left. Qin Feifei was lying on the bed with a pale face. Qin Yongchang stood at the side, his face full of concern. "Uncle." Jean Hauser looked at Qin Yongchang and his gaze fell on Qin Feifei's face. "Is Feifei okay? She has an old illness. It's not like you don't know." Qin Yongchang glanced at Jean Hauser as he spoke. "You haven't come back for the past few days. Feifei misses you too much. She ran out to look for you, but you know, the temperature dropped yesterday. Feifei's health isn't good, so when she was drenched in the rain, she got sick." Jean Hauser didn't say anything, but Qin Feifei, who was on the bed, glanced at her father. "Dad, don't blame Brother Hao. It's not like Brother Hao didn't come to see me on purpose. You know that Brother Hao is busy with work." Feifei. Qin Yongchang looked at his daughter with a conflicted expression. He seemed to be helpless that his daughter always valued Jean Hauser more than him. "Hauser." Qin Yongchang looked at Jean Hauser. "Originally, this wasn't your fault. But Feifei is very weak now, so you should accompany her." As he spoke, Qin Yongchang walked out. The room quieted down, leaving only Jean Hauser and Qin Feifei. After Qin Yongchang left, Qin Feifei reached out to pull Jean Hauser's hand. "Brother Hao, Dad is too worried about me. It has nothing to do with you. Please don't be angry." "I'm not angry." Jean Hauser wanted to pull his hand out, but Qin Feifei held it tightly. "Brother Hao, are you really not angry?" Her face was full of uneasiness at this time, as if she was really afraid that Jean Hauser would be angry. Jean Hauser pursed his lips into a straight line and shook his head gently. Qin Feifei was satisfied, and a gentle smile appeared on her face. But her hands were still holding his hand tightly. "Brother Hao, what have you been busy with these days? I miss you very much. When I call you, you always say that you have something to do. When I go to your company, I can't find you. Do you know how worried I am about you? There are a lot of things to do at the company." Jean Hauser looked at Qin Feifei and resisted the urge to pull his hand back. "No matter how busy the company is, you still have to take care of your health. Just look at me and you will understand. Ever since I was young, I have been a patient. Now that I have grown up, not only can I not help you, but I will also tire you out. It's nothing." Jean Hauser's voice was very indifferent. His indifference didn't just start today. Ever since Qin Feifei saved Jean Hauser and brought him home, he had always been like this. However, the more Jean Hauser was like this, the more Qin Feifei couldn't stop herself. She always wanted to get Jean Hauser. "Brother Hao, you don't have to comfort me. I know that you have always thought of me as a burden, so you don't want to tell me anything about the company or the outside world. But Brother Hao, I really like you." Qin Feifei's eyes were fixed on Jean Hauser. She could clearly see that those eyes were all about him. "I know." Qin Feifei bit her lip. She was still a little hurt by Jean Hauser's reaction. "Brother Hao, what about you? Do you like me?" Jean Hauser frowned and looked at Qin Feifei as he withdrew his hand. "You're not in good health. Rest early." "Brother Hao." Qin Feifei went to pull his hand again. She looked up at him with pleading eyes. Do you hate me? Don't think too much. It's nothing. Then why didn't you come back to accompany me? You said that you would take care of me. Fei Fei. This time, Jean Hauser didn't have a cold expression. In my heart you're similar to my sister. But, all right, it's getting late. You should rest. Jean Hauser patted her shoulder and turned to leave. After he left, Chen Feifei's expression almost changed. Who wanted to be his sister? Who wanted to be his sister? She had always wanted to be his woman, not his sister. Chen Feifei looked at the bedside lamp at the head of the bed and swept the floor without hesitation. The room was very soundproof and covered with a thick carpet. No matter how loud the noise she made, no one would hear it. Not only did she smash the bedside lamp, but Chen Feifei also threw everything around her that could be smashed and thrown away. It wasn't until she was panting and exhausted that she called the servants to clean up the room. The servants of the Qin family were already used to Chen Feifei's outburst from time to time. They silently packed up the things and put in new ones. In a short period of time, even the carpet had been changed. The room was the same as before Jean Hauser came in. There was no trace of damage. Jean Hauser went downstairs and met Chen Yongcheng. When he saw him, he waved. The two of them once again went to the Chen family's study room one after the other. Hauser, have you been busy recently? I'm fine. Jean Hauser's voice was indifferent and sounded very calm. You haven't been in the company for a few days, and the company's matters have been pushed back a lot. Look, I'm old now, and my energy can't keep up. In the future, you still have to spend more time on business. Yes, I understand. Speaking of which, I'm almost at the age to retire. Look, how about you take over the Qin Corporation? Jean Hauser lowered his eyes and his face was expressionless. I'm afraid that's not appropriate, right? There's nothing inappropriate about it. After you and Fei Fei get married, won't the Qin family be yours? Jean Hauser didn't reply, but Qin Yongchang sighed at this moment. Hauser, I also know that you're not willing to marry Fei Fei. But Fei Fei is my only daughter. She really likes you. I can't let her suffer. Uncle. I also know that all these years, you've only treated Fei Fei as your sister. There's no love between a man and a woman. But her health isn't good, and she's been spoiled by me. I won't be at ease handing her over to someone else. After thinking about it, only you are suitable. Seeing that Jean Hauser didn't say anything, the expression on Qin Yongchang's face became more and more pained. Hauser, you can't forget your roots. If our family hadn't taken you in, sent you to school, and given you the best conditions, how could you have achieved what you have today? Don't tell me you're thinking of abandoning Fei Fei just because you're successful? Uncle, I've said it before. I treat Fei Fei as my sister. I'll do my best to take care of her. What's more useful than marrying her and accompanying her for the rest of her life? Seeing that Jean Hauser still wanted to speak, he went forward and patted him on the shoulder. All right, you should be tired today. Go and rest. As for the wedding date, I'll get someone to pick a good day. Anyway, you guys already understand and are familiar with each other. If you need time, then get engaged first, then get married. Uncle, all right, I still have work to deal with. You can go back to your room and rest first. Qin Yongchang didn't listen to Jean Hauser. He waved his hand and sent him away. Jean Hauser glanced at Qin Yongchang, then finally took a step back and left the study. Before he returned to his room, he saw the family servants coming down from upstairs with 2 large garbage bags. Jean Hauser stood there until the servant left. Then he went upstairs again. Shi Mengwan was shocked when she received Xiao Qi's call. Hello, Mengwan. Xiao Qi's voice sounded very happy. Have you recovered from your cold? Yes. Thank you for your concern. It wasn't a cold, but Shi Mengwan couldn't say that. What's the matter? That's good. I said I wanted to come and see you. No need. Shi Mengwan answered a little quickly. She looked at the time. Jean Hauser hadn't returned yet, but she had already prepared the food. That's a pity. Xiao Qi thought for a moment. Mengwan, we didn't finish watching the movie that day. Do you have time recently? I might not have time recently. Shi Mengwan bit her lip. My studio has received a new order recently, so I'm a little busy. I see. Xiao-Qi nodded. Then can we have a meal together? Xiao-Qi, look, you're very busy and don't have time to watch a movie. Then you have to have time to eat, right? Before I came, Auntie told me that you don't know how to take care of yourself. Look, you can't let me disappoint Auntie, can you? Sure, Mengwan bit her lip. After thinking about it, she decided to agree. At least she should make things clear to him. Then how about this? Let's meet at noon tomorrow. Okay. Xiao-Qi was satisfied. He said a few more words of concern to her and told her to take good care of herself before hanging up. Shi Mengwan sat down and took out her phone to call Zhan Haoze. However, no one picked up after calling for a long time. She looked at the table of dishes, and her good mood seemed to have suddenly disappeared. She had been very happy these past few days. Zhan Haoze had been here with her. During the day, she stayed at home to draw, while Zhan Haoze went to work. At night, they ate together, took a walk, and lingered. Zhan Haoze was much gentler than before. At least, he no longer tormented her for fun. She could also get happiness from that matter. When her body merged with Zhan Haoze's body, she felt satisfied. Not only her body, but also her heart. That was the dear brother she had been longing to find. That was the person she had always liked and loved. Looking at the black screen, Shi Mengwan sent another message to Zhan Haoze. She didn't say anything unnecessary. She just asked him if he would come back for dinner. This time, Zhan Haoze replied, I have something to do today. You eat first. Putting down her phone, Shi Mengwan looked at the dishes on the table and felt a headache. There was also a trace of undetectable disappointment and loneliness. The next day, Shi Mengwan arrived at the place she had agreed to meet Xiao-Qi early. She had always been afraid of the cold. Today, she was wearing a thick khaki coat and a scarf of the same color. Her entire body looked much more plump. She thought that she had arrived early, but she didn't expect Xiao-Qi to be earlier than her. Sorry, I'm late. Not at all. I arrived early. Xiao-Qi got up and pulled a chair for Shi Mengwan. This action made Shi Mengwan a little uncomfortable. She took a step back and looked at Xiao-Qi. I'll do it myself. Can't you give me a chance to serve a beauty? This person. Shi Mengwan really didn't know what to say. She didn't decline anymore and sat down. The temperature of the air conditioner in the room was very high. She took off her coat and put it aside. Are all fashion designers as good at dressing as you? Xiao-Qi looked at the clothes she was wearing, and there was obvious admiration in his eyes. Shi Mengwan looked at herself and cleared her throat. Thank you. I think so. But I think you're definitely the best at dressing, Xiao-Qi whispered. After all, they can't be as beautiful as you. Thank you. Shi Mengwan felt a little uncomfortable from his praise. The waiter happened to bring the menu over at this moment, and Xiao-Qi very gracefully let Shi Mengwan order first. After ordering the dishes, Shi Mengwan looked at Xiao-Qi and thought about how to speak to him. At this moment, Xiao-Qi poured her a cup of hot tea. It's cold outside. Have a cup of tea first. Thank you. To be honest, Xiao-Qi was really a very good marriage partner. No matter what, he was very suitable. But this was how the world was. You might not like the suitable one. Xiao-Qi, last time, I was going to introduce my situation, but I didn't finish. I think I'd better tell you about it. Her serious attitude made Xiao-Qi also become a little serious. Go ahead. I want to say that we're actually not suitable. What's wrong with me? Xiao-Qi asked instinctively. After asking, he realized that he seemed to be too narcissistic. I'm sorry, I just think that I think my qualifications are not bad, so I think you can give it a try. Shi Mengwan shook her head. The problem isn't with you, it's with me. She picked up the cup with both hands and held it in her hand. She felt the slight heat wake her up. I have someone I like. This time, Xiao-Qi was stunned. You have someone you like? Then why did you come on a blind date? He saw that Shi Mengwan didn't look like one of those two-timing women. Because my parents don't know, and even if they did, they might object. I see. She didn't say more, but Xiao-Qi seemed to understand. Is it because the person you like can't agree to your family's conditions, so your parents object? Shi Mengwan knew that it wasn't because of that, But since Xiaoqi was certain, she didn't want to explain anymore. Her silence was tacit agreement. Xiaoqi nodded. I understand. The person you like doesn't want to marry into the family, and your parents object? Thinking about it, most men, especially now that many of them were only children, how could they agree to marry into the family? Ming, we already know each other. I think, if possible, you should go and do the ideological work for your parents. That would be better. I thank you, but there's no need. Some things aren't as simple as you think. Sure, Mengwan hadn't told her family about this at all, nor did she tell Jean Hauser. She wasn't sure if Jean Hauser would agree or not. She wasn't willing to continue, so Xiaoqi didn't ask. The waiter began to serve the dishes, and the two of them ate in silence. When Xiaoqi put down the bowl and chopsticks, he looked at Shi Mengwan. You like that person a lot? I love him. Shi Mengwan also put down her chopsticks. When she answered these 3 words, her eyes lit up, and her entire face was filled with the light of love. What else did Xiaoqi not understand? I got it. I won't disturb you again next time. Sorry, it's okay. Xiaoqi was able to let it go. But Mengwan, as your friend, I still want to give you a suggestion. Since you like that man so much, then can that man also sacrifice himself for you? I don't think it's a big deal to marry into the family. Even if the child takes your surname, he will still be his child in the future. This is the truth. Times are different, so there are some things that don't need to be rigidly formal. What do you think? Thank you, I understand. I'm sorry, I was being too talkative. Anyway, I feel that if that man really loves you, he will definitely agree to this condition. Shi Mengwan was silent. After Xiaoqi left, she was still sitting in her seat. If a man really loved her, would he agree to her conditions? But when that person was Jean Hauser, why didn't she have any confidence at all? That night, Jean Hauser didn't come again. She called him and he said that he had something to do. Shi Mengwan hung up the phone and thought about how to bring up this matter the next time she saw Jean Hauser. It wasn't until the 3rd day that Shi Mengwan finally saw Jean Hauser when she returned home. He didn't look any different, but Shi Mengwan could tell from his furrowed brows that he seemed to be a little depressed. Jean Hauser? Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao had decided to return to Rong City together. Not only did they want to go back, but they also wanted to bring Xiang Kaiping back with them. The melancholy of parting made Shi Mengwan recover from the disappointment she felt just now. Shi Mengwan and Su Qingsang were high school classmates and deskmates. Ever since the two of them met, they had gotten along very well in the past few years because they were very compatible. Even though the two of them later chose completely different majors, their relationship had always been very good. The medical university was also very close to her Z University. Although going to Rong City was still in the country, it couldn't be compared to Lin City. On the 13th of the year, Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao were at the airport, preparing to fly to Rong City. Shi Mengwan was reluctant to leave. She went to the airport early and talked to Su Qingsang for a long time. Su Qingsang was also reluctant to leave her, and she didn't look very happy. She seemed to have something on her mind. Shi Mengwan didn't think too much about it, thinking that she was reluctant to leave Lin City. In fact, she was also reluctant to leave. She didn't sleep well last night, and there were dark circles under her eyes. When Su Qingsang noticed it, she could only remind her again not to focus on drawing next time and ignore her health. Shi Mengwan knew that she really cared about her and was touched. After sending Su Qingsang away, Shi Mengwan thought for a while and put her energy back into work. Since she planned to participate in the competition in France, she had to put some effort into it. On the day of the Lantern Festival, Shi Mengwan thought of Jean Hauser again. She still remembered that year when the two of them ate lantern dumplings together, and she also remembered that he bought the wine-fermented meatballs as lantern dumplings. Not wanting her emotions to be trapped in her thoughts of Jean Hauser, Shi Mengwan went home. Mother Shi made the lantern dumplings and waited for her. When she ate the lantern dumplings, she took a photo and posted it on her WeChat moments. Then, she sent the photo to Jean Hauser alone. The lantern dumplings are very sweet. I miss you very much. She never received a reply from Jean Hauze. At first, Shi Mengwan kept looking at her phone, but later, she simply put it down. She focused on accompanying her parents and sister. At the same time, in Qing City, Jean Hauze was sitting in the car, and beside him was his assistant, Tang Hua. President Jean. Tang Hua placed a document in Jean Hauze's hand. I've already checked. The old man isn't feeling well and has already been hospitalized. He was sent in yesterday. It's the festival today. The old man dislikes those people for being noisy and chased them away. Jean Hauze casually flipped through the information in front of him under the lights in the car. Are you sure there's no one? There are bodyguards guarding the door and doctors on duty. Let's go. Jean Hauze placed the document back in Tang Hua's hand. Let's go meet the old man. Boss. Tang Hua even called him by his old name. Isn't it too early? I heard from the doctor that he has already passed the critical stage. It seems that the old man can still live for a long time. We don't have to be in a hurry. No. Jean Hauze stared at the entrance of the hospital with a sinister gaze. I don't want to wait anymore. In the VIP ward of the hospital, the entire floor was very quiet. The weather in Qing City had been pretty good these few days. The full moon hung high in the sky outside. In the ward, an old man who looked to be in his 70s was sleeping on the hospital bed with his eyes tightly closed. The sudden sound in the room made him open his eyes. The environment he had been in for decades made him instantly alert. His hand reached under the pillow. If I were you, I wouldn't act rashly now. The man deliberately lowered his voice, but it sounded very clear. The old man's hand paused. The lights in the ward were turned on at this moment, and he narrowed his eyes. After adapting to the light, he looked at Jean Hauze in front of him. It's you? It seems that the old man knows me. Then I don't need to introduce myself. Jean Hauze walked to the sofa opposite the bed and sat down. He folded his legs elegantly, and he looked relaxed and leisurely. The old man stared at him for a long time and nodded gently. I didn't expect you to come back after so many years. Yes. I've disappointed you that I didn't die outside. Jean Hauze met the old man's sharp gaze and didn't dodge at all. The corners of his lips curled up with a hint of mockery. The old man coughed a few times, and his face was redder than before. You came back to take revenge? The old man narrowed his eyes. His old and shrewd eyes didn't miss any of Jean Hauze's expressions. The corners of Jean Hauze's lips curled up slightly. He leaned back against the back of the sofa. Shouldn't I? The old man was silent and stared at Jean Hauze. What do you want to do? You should ask me what I did. The old man glared at Jean Hauze, and a hint of wariness suddenly appeared in his eyes. What did you do? Jean Hauze didn't answer the old man's question. He got up and walked to the end of the bed. He pulled out the medical record and glanced at it. I think it's better for you not to know now. Putting the medical record back, Jean Hauze's expression was indifferent. Otherwise, I'm afraid that if you know, your condition will worsen and you die of anger. That would be my sin. Don't you think so? Grandpa, you? The old man covered his chest because of his words. His other hand pointed at Jean Hauze, and his face was livid. Jean Hauze looked at him without any fluctuation. He looked at this old man who could be considered to be in his twilight years, Jean Kuan. Jean Kuan had difficulty breathing. He reached out his hand to get the medicine. The moment he got the medicine bottle, Jean Hauze gently pinched the bottle in his hand. He flipped the bottle over and raised it a little higher. Grandpa, why are you angry? You are the pillar of the Jean family now. If you were to fall, the Jean family would be in a mess. Jean Kuan's expression became even uglier. He looked at Jean Hauze as if he was looking at an Azura from hell. He raised his hand, but he didn't manage to grab the medicine. He could only reach out and want to ring the bell for help. Jean Hauze looked at his movements and saw that his trembling fingers were about to touch the bell. However, he grabbed Jean Kuan's hand the moment he was about to touch it. Jean Kuan panted even more violently. Jean Hauze expressionlessly pressed his body back onto the bed. Before he could react, he poured out a pill from the bottle and put it into his mouth. After feeding him the medicine, he seemed to have been stained with something dirty. He took out a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped his hands clean. After taking the medicine, Jean Kuen's breathing finally stopped. However, his expression couldn't recover for a while. Seeing Jean House's actions, his face turned from white to red again. His swollen face, which had almost turned purple, looked a little terrifying under the light. You. Jean Kuen pointed at Jean House and spent a lot of effort to finish his sentence. What exactly do you want to do? Jean House looked at the expression on Jean Kuen's face and suddenly smiled. He rarely smiled, and his smile at this moment undoubtedly carried deep malice. He threw the handkerchief to the side, bent down, and looked at Jean Kuen. He looked at his old and turbid eyes, and said word by word extremely slowly, "I'm here to get back what I deserve." Jean Kuen glared at him, and his hands trembled even more. Jean House didn't want to let it go just like that. He moved forward a little, and his voice was even softer than before. "After you get it, destroy it." Jean Kuen was completely out of breath this time. His eyes widened, and his breath was stuck there, almost suffocating. The corners of Jean House's lips curled into a mocking smile. Before the other party completely fainted, he pressed the bell. He stood up straight and looked at Jean Kuen's powerless hand. He left the ward without looking back. When he left, he bumped into the doctors who had rushed over. The doctors were very concerned about the people in this special ward. When they saw Jean House suddenly appear, they didn't understand where this person came from. Jean House acted as if he didn't see them and walked straight out. The bodyguard who had been staying inside just now had already come back to his senses. He reached out to stop Jean House. Jean House glanced at the two people coldly. The aura of the two bodyguards was actually taken away by him, and they took a step back at the same time. After coming out of the hospital, Tang Hua was already waiting outside. When he saw Jean House come out, he was the first to open the car door for him. When Jean House got into the car, he also got into the car. "Boss? Don't worry, I won't die." Jean House looked at the inpatient building outside the car window. His eyes were a little cold. He reached out and took out the document from just now to look at it. "Fox? Boss?" Tang Hua looked at him. "Are we going back to the hotel next?" Jean House was about to nod when his phone rang. He opened it and saw a message. On it was a bowl of glutinous rice balls. Looking at the photo and the words, the corners of Jean House's lips unconsciously curled up a little. His fingers swiped across the screen and was about to reply. Bang! Their car was hit by someone from behind. Jean House's phone flew out and fell into the car. He turned around abruptly, and Tang Hua turned around with him. The two of them saw that under the night sky, 3 cars were following behind them. They had already surrounded their car. "Boss?" Tang Hua looked at Jean House worriedly. Jean House narrowed his eyes. "Speed up." The driver heard his words and stepped on the accelerator. They accelerated, and the car behind them also accelerated. At this moment, the car on the right was once again heading in their direction and slamming hard into them. With a bang, the car that Jean House and the others were sitting in was knocked to the side, and then it slammed heavily into the side guardrail. The car collided extremely violently, but the 3 cars behind it didn't intend to let it go just like that. The car behind them followed suit and crashed into them. There was another ping sound. This time, it was even louder than the previous 2 times. Shi Mengwan waited until midnight, but she didn't receive a reply from Jean House. Her mood dropped again. She ate lantern dumplings with her parents, admired the moon, and chatted with her sister. When she returned to her room, she couldn't fall asleep. She tossed and turned on the bed, feeling conflicted. She couldn't help but take out her phone to take a look. There was still no reply from Jean House. She bit her lip and couldn't help but feel a little lonely. She didn't know who said that it wasn't because she was lonely that she missed him, but because she missed him that she was lonely. In the past, she thought that these words were pretentious, but now she realized that it was true. It wasn't pretentious. She couldn't help but want to call Jean House, but she was worried that Jean House really had something to do. After thinking about it, she could only continue sending messages. "Good night." After sending these 2 words, Shi Mengwan waited for a while, But before she could receive a reply from Jean Hauser, she fell asleep in a depressed and conflicted mood. Dear brother. Shi Mengwan looked at Xiao Zhe with an obvious smile in her eyes. Are you serious? Today, the young man came home and told her that he had helped her solve the problem of going to school, so she could continue going to school. This news made her exceptionally happy. Yes. The young man nodded. Looking at the news he brought, Shi Mengwan's eyes lit up. She felt that this decision was right. That's really great. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but reach out and hug Xiao Zhe. Dear brother, how did you do it? Xiao Zhe was caught off guard by her and felt a little uncomfortable. His hand hung there and didn't move for a long time. After Shi Mengwan finished hugging him, she realized that she was a little too excited. She took a step back and looked at the young man, feeling a little embarrassed. Dear brother, when can I go to school? You can go tomorrow. Xiao Zhe looked at Shi Mengwan. It's the nearby 5th high school. They have already agreed to accept you. You can go and register tomorrow. Then you can go to school. Really? Shi Mengwan was very happy. That's really great. After being happy, she looked at the young man with concern. Then, dear brother, what about you? Me? What about me? I'm going to school. What about you? I won't go. It's the same for you. Dear brother? Shi Mengwan looked at the young man. Even if she didn't understand the key point, she could understand that with Xiao Zhe's current ability, he must have done something for her to be able to go to school without a Lin City Hoku. She didn't understand what he had done. To her, everything about the young man was like a mystery. He could always solve all the problems in the shortest time. Dear brother, if you don't go to school, then I won't go either. What nonsense are you talking about? The young man glared at her. Didn't you want to be a designer? But you don't want to anymore? Shi Mengwan bit her lip and looked at the young man. She kept shaking her head. No, I want to be, but I want to go to school with you. All right, you don't have to worry about my matters. The young man looked at her with a strong expression that couldn't be refused. Don't worry about me for now. I've asked the teacher. She said that you haven't been to school for the past 6 months and might not be able to keep up. Before school starts, you have to buy a semester's worth of books to read first. Dear brother, let's go. I'll take you to buy books. Shi Mengwan couldn't win against Xiao Zhe, so she could only compromise. She didn't quite understand why the young man didn't go to school himself. She vaguely knew why, but at that time, she was still young, so she couldn't understand the answer. Shi Mengwan waited for a few days, but Jean Hauser didn't appear. Another half a month passed, and it was already the 1st month of the lunar calendar. In the middle of the 2nd month of the lunar calendar, the temperature in Lin City began to rise. At first, Shi Mengwan would try to call Jean Hauser, but after she realized that she couldn't get through to his phone, she stopped calling him. Every day before she went to bed, she would call Jean Hauser. If she couldn't get through, she would send another message. If no one replied, she would go back to sleep. At the same time as the weather warmed up, Shi Mengwan's work also passed the preliminary round of the French fashion design competition. The other party sent an invitation letter and asked Shi Mengwan to prepare to go to France to participate in the rest of the competition. This good news more or less made Shi Mengwan feel a little better. But it only lasted for less than half a day. Chapter 673. Shi Mengwan was wearing the new clothes Xiao Zhe had bought for her and carrying the new school bag Xiao Zhe had bought for her. The book inside was also bought by Xiao Zhe. The school bag was very heavy, not only for this semester, but also for the previous semester. Fortunately, Shi Mengwan's grades had always been good. Although she didn't study last semester, she believed that she would work hard to catch up. She was thinking about why the teacher called her today and didn't give her any homework. Instead, he asked her to read through the books that she had read before. If there was anything she didn't understand, she could look for her teacher. She was in a good mood and quickened her pace. After living in this bungalow for more than half a year, she was no longer as careless as when she first came here. Turn right, turn left. Just 3 more alleys and they would reach home. But before he got there, he heard the sounds of fighting. This area was really chaotic. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but quicken her steps. She wanted to avoid it, but she heard a familiar voice. What? Haven't you learned your lesson from last time? The youth's voice had already passed the stage of puberty. His voice had already begun to become clear and bright, and it was the voice she heard every day. She widened her eyes and couldn't help but stop in her tracks. She quietly walked over and hid behind the corner of the wall. She silently poked her head out. Beside the young man stood a few boys that she did not recognize. They were all about the same age as him. There were a few people lying on the ground. The leader's face was covered in blood, and the young man's foot was stepping on the man's chest. What if you haven't learned it? I'll say it again. This place, as well as the East Pier, are all my territory. The next time you cross the border, I won't be polite anymore. The young man was already more than 1.8 meters tall, and he was thin. Most of the time, although he was quiet in front of her, he was gentle. Shi Mengwan had never seen this youth before. Her heart was beating a little fast. The person he was stepping on wanted to get up. Stinking brat, I'm telling you, don't be arrogant. Brother Liang won't let you off. Heh. The youth laughed. It was a very arrogant laugh. He began to exert force on his leg. Brother Liang won't let me off, right? Then let him try. Not to mention Brother Liang, even if he had the ability to call Big Boss Hui over, I wouldn't be afraid of him. Understand? As he spoke, his foot was pressed against the man's chin. That person's neck was stepped on, and his face was filled with pain. His face, which had already been beaten into a pig's head, looked even scarier now. You, the man started to lose his breath, but the young man had no intention of letting go. Not only did he not, but he also stepped even harder. The man's eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets, and he was about to stop breathing. Shi Mengwan was shocked and couldn't help but gasp. That voice was very soft, but it moved Qiao Zhe. The young man's gaze shifted over. Shi Mengwan quickly retracted her body, but she was still a step too late and was seen by the youth. The young man's expression was rather ugly. He retracted his leg, caught his breath, and coughed violently. He turned to look at the few people following him and gave them a look. Those people began to deal with the aftermath. The people lying on the ground were quickly dragged away by them. The young man's expression was solemn as he clenched his fists at his sides. He was only stunned for a few seconds before he reacted. His slender legs walked step by step in Shi Mengwan's direction. Shi Mengwan's body was trembling. In the past half a year that she had been with the young man, other than occasionally coming back with some injuries, the young man had rarely been injured in the past few days. She knew that he would fight outside, but she had never seen the young man treat others like this. It turned out that the young man wasn't uninjured. Instead, had he changed from a victim to a perpetrator? Shi Mengwan didn't dare to think about it. Her body was trembling. She didn't know what she was afraid of. However, the ruthlessness on the young man's face just now really scared her. A pair of long legs suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. She looked up along the legs and saw the young man's expressionless face. Her body actually went limp and she sat on the ground just like that. The young man wasn't in a hurry to reach out to help her up. He was already 16 years old. He was tall and thin, and one could already see the shadow of an adult on his body. He stared at her face from above, his lips opening and closing. You saw it. Shi Mengwan instinctively wanted to shake her head, but her body was cold and she couldn't say a word. However, there was a hint of fear in her eyes as she looked at him. The young man looked at her and reached out his hand to her. Shi Mengwan's body trembled. Thinking about the scene just now, she instinctively retreated, wanting to avoid the young man's hand. Qiao Zhe narrowed his eyes, and there was a hint of danger in them. He had asked someone to think of a way to get Shi Mengwan a place to go to school because he didn't want her to stay at home every day, and he didn't want her to see him like this today. However, he didn't expect her to still see it. Looking at Shi Mengwan's avoiding gaze, he forcefully reached out his hand and took away Shi Mengwan's school bag. He carried it on his shoulder. Before she could react to what he was going to do, he bent down and picked her up. Shi Mengwan's body trembled even more, but she was familiar with the young man's embrace. She looked at the young man's handsome side profile and swallowed her saliva. The young man didn't seem to notice that something was wrong with her. He just carried her back to the bungalow where they were. After Shi Mengwan entered the door, her legs were still a little weak. The young man placed her on the sofa. Almost as soon as she was put down by him, she shrunk to the other side of the sofa. The young man suddenly moved his face closer. His big hands supported her side as he stared at her face. "Are you afraid of me?" Shi Mengwan looked at the young man's familiar face. These days, they slept together every night. Sometimes, when she was cold, she would wake up to find herself in the young man's arms. The environment of the bungalow was bad, but she had never been cold. She had never been hungry. She suddenly shook her head. Her movements were very gentle but firm. Before the young man could take his hand away, Shi Mengwan bit her lip and said timidly, Did you want to kill him just now?" He didn't expect her to ask such a question. The young man was stunned for a moment, then he shook his head. "No." Shi Mengwan seemed to be relieved. "You don't kill anyone, okay?" The young man looked into her eyes and caressed her face with his slender and well-defined hands. "I won't kill anyone." Shi Mengwan heaved a sigh of relief. The young man's hands were a little cold. The weather hadn't turned warm in this season. She looked at him with a hint of anticipation in her eyes. "Killing is against the law." She said this in a very low voice. The young man seemed to want to laugh, but he held it in. Killing is against the law. One really knows a lot. He was treating her like a child. Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth and suddenly raised her voice. "Don't care. If you kill someone, you'll go to prison. I won't go to see you when the time comes." She said it resolutely, but the expression in her eyes was completely different. The young man looked at her duplicitous look and raised his eyebrows. "Oh, if I go to prison, you won't come to see me?" "Of course." Shi Mengwan nodded and emphasized, "If you go to prison, I'll go home and let you be alone in the future." Her face was young and childish. The young man suddenly reached out and hugged her in his arms. "Okay, I'll listen to you." His embrace made Shi Mengwan relax. She wasn't as afraid as before, and she was no longer trembling. "Dear brother, don't do anything dangerous, okay?" The young man didn't answer her question. He just tightened his arms. Shi Mengwan had a little difficulty breathing, but she still had to say, "If you do something dangerous, what will I do?" She reached out to push him away and moved away from his arms a little. "Dear brother, if you're really locked up or if something else happens, what will I do?" After such a long time, she had run away from home. But she had never felt lonely because of him. His care and love for her made her forget the loneliness of being alone. More importantly, she realized that her dear brother was different in her heart. "Dear brother, I don't want anything to happen to you, and I don't want to be separated from you, so you have to take care of yourself, okay?" The young man looked into her eyes. Her lips opened and closed as she said words that she was worried about him. Today, she saw his dark side, but she wasn't afraid, nor did she run away. He couldn't tell what he felt in his heart. Something was surging in his heart. He hugged her tightly again and buried his face in the crook of her neck. His voice was very soft as he smelled the faint fragrance of a young girl on her body. "Okay, I promise you. I'll take care of myself and won't be separated from you." "Really? Really?" Shi Mengwan raised her head and looked into the young man's eyes. Her heart had already calmed down. She bit her lip. "Dear brother, we'll always be together, right?" "Yes." The young man nodded and looked into Shi Mengwan's eyes with a focused expression. "We'll always be together." He would be with her, protect her, and not let anyone hurt her. "Dear brother." Shi Mengwan reached out and hugged the young man's waist. No matter how her dear brother treated others, as long as they could be like this forever, it would be fine. She hugged him very tightly until she saw the trace of blood on the young man's sleeve. She was shocked and forced herself not to look and not to care. She stepped back. She gestured for him to take a shower. She washed his clothes for him, so the blood stain was naturally washed away. However, even though Shi Mengwan could wash away the blood stain, it didn't mean that she could forget the young man's ruthless expression. That night she inevitably had nightmares. She dreamed that the young man was holding a knife in his hand and was constantly slashing at a person whose face couldn't be seen clearly. She screamed with all her might, trying to make the young man stop. When the young man saw her coming, he finally stopped. The young man walked towards her and told her not to be afraid. Shi Mengwan kept shaking her head. Looking at the police who rushed over, she wanted to tell the young man to leave quickly, but she couldn't say anything. She could only watch helplessly as the police took the young man away. No matter how much she cried, it was useless. At this moment, the scene in the dream changed. The young man's face became Zhang Haoze. When she saw Zhang Haoze again, it was through the iron window. Shi Mengwan was frightened. She wanted to pull his hand, but his figure was getting further and further away. She woke up from her dream screaming, "Dear brother, dear brother." The scene in the dream began to enlarge, and that feeling made her fall into deep despair. She opened her eyes and was shocked by the figure at the head of the bed. When she saw clearly, she realized that the person sitting there was Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze? She wasn't fully awake yet, nor had she recovered from the dream. She suddenly saw him, and she still felt like she was in a dream. Yes. In the next second, Shi Mengwan suddenly sat up and wrapped her arms around Zhang Haoze's neck. She hugged him tightly. "Dear brother, dear brother." When she thought of the figure in the iron window in her dream, she felt a strong sense of insecurity. She hugged him very tightly and pressed her face against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Zhang Haoze let her hug him and didn't move. Shi Mengwan suddenly raised her head and kissed his lips. Her kiss was a little urgent and a little flustered. She was also a little scared. She didn't know what her dear brother had experienced all these years. What made him, a street thug, suddenly become a business elite? She also didn't know how he started the company and what hardships he had experienced. But she thought that he should be safe now, right? It shouldn't be like what she thought in her dream, right? She couldn't help but think of the last time they met. He seemed to be fighting with someone again. That made the feeling of insecurity even more obvious. "Dear brother." She kissed his lips haphazardly. All her experience came from him. In this aspect, she was undoubtedly clumsy. But this clumsiness made Zhang Haoze lose control. Her hands tugged at his clothes. She was a little anxious. She was so anxious that she couldn't unbuckle her belt even after trying a few times. Her face was red, but at this moment, Zhang Haoze turned the tables and pressed her down on the bed. It was a dark night, and the weather outside was a little gloomy. Spring had arrived, and there was a lot of rain. It was accompanied by the occasional sound of spring thunder. Soon, it started to rain outside. The sound of the thunderstorm covered up the sound of the collision in the room. Those emotions that were out of control also existed on such a thunderstorm night. When Shi Mengwan woke up in the morning, she thought she had a dream. She dreamed that Zhang Haoze had returned and that he was fine. She dreamed that they were the same as before. She enjoyed the pleasure of being intimate. She opened her eyes, and the feeling of exhaustion and weakness in her body suddenly woke her up. It wasn't a dream. Was Zhang Haoze really back? She sat up abruptly, ignoring the marks on her body and the discomfort on her body. There was no one in the room. She casually put on her clothes and went outside. Zhang Haoze had just closed the door. On the dining table beside him was breakfast that had just been delivered. "You're awake." Shi Mengwan blinked her eyes. Only then did she confirm that she was really not dreaming. She went forward and hugged Zhang Haoze again. She rubbed her face against his chest and smelled the mint scent on his body. Her heart slowly relaxed and she finally wasn't so nervous anymore. She looked up at him and realized that he seemed to have lost a little weight. She didn't take a closer look last night, but now that it was daytime, she took a closer look and realized that Zhang Haoze had lost a lot of weight. Not only had he lost weight, but he also looked a little haggard. "You?" She had many questions to ask, but in the end, she could only hug him again. Thinking of his appearance, she sniffed and her eyes inexplicably felt a little hot. Zhang Haoze let her hug him without moving. After a while, he patted her back. "Let's eat." Shi Mengwan nodded and walked to the dining table to sit down. Today wasn't the weekend, and she still had to go to work. She looked up at Zhang Haoze. "You're back from your business trip?" Can you rest for the next few days? Yes. Shi Mengwan nodded and looked at him again. Will you come back for dinner tonight? Zhang Haoze looked at her. He still had a lot of things to do. He had to leave again after a few days, but, okay. She wanted to refuse, but the words that came out of her mouth became affirmative. Shi Mengwan smiled and seemed to be relieved. After dinner, Shi Mengwan went to the company. She had spent a few days to draw the work that she was going to compete in. She had named it Blue Mystery. To her, Zhang Haoze was that mystery. But she wasn't in a hurry. She had the patience to slowly solve this mystery. Zhang Haoze got into the car, and Tang Hua looked at him worriedly. Boss, are you okay? Zhang Haoze shook his head. The car accident had caused Zhang Haoze to suffer some minor injuries. However, he refused to rest for long. Instead, after he finished his matters in Qing City, he came here. He roughly knew that the person upstairs was his boss's favorite. But, boss, I'm afraid we'll have a lot of things to do in the future. Moreover, the situation is getting more and more chaotic. It's not appropriate for you to be like this now. Tang Hua had followed Zhang Haoze for a long time. In the past 10 years, what hadn't they experienced? But in the past, those undercurrents were still calm on the surface, but now it was different. Zhang Haoze's appearance in Qing City was equivalent to turning everything over to the surface. Although that car accident didn't cause much damage, it was definitely a warning. Zhang Kun wasn't dead yet, and those people below weren't honest. Not to mention that there were countless people who didn't like Zhang Haoze and wanted to get rid of him. Boss, why don't you stay away from Miss Shi for now? With their current abilities, even if they could protect Shi Mengwan, it wouldn't be good for such a big weakness to be known by others. Zhang Haoze leaned against the back of the chair with his eyes half closed. His face was gloomy, and no one knew what he was thinking. He didn't say anything, so Tang Hua couldn't say much. The car drove towards the Chun Corporation's building. Just as they were about to reach the Chun Corporation's building, Zhang Haoze finally spoke. From tomorrow onwards, I'll move back to the Chun family. Boss? You've been living in the Chun family all this time. Do you think those people don't know? The problem now wasn't where he lived, but he didn't finish his sentence, but Zhang Haoze understood what he meant. His face was gloomy, and his expression looked quite solemn. Boss? Just listen to me. Tang Hua had told him long ago, but Zhang Haoze had always refused. Was he still hesitating at this time? Stop talking. Boss, what will happen if you get engaged to Miss Qin? It's not like you're getting married. This period of time is just right to divert their attention. It's good for you and sister-in-law Shi. Zhang Haoze pursed his lips into a straight line, and his gaze kept looking out of the window. Seeing this, Tang Hua called out again. Chapter 674. There was silence in the car. Zhang Haoze did not respond to Tang Hua's words. He knew that Tang Hua was right. At this stage, it was best and most suitable for him to get engaged to Qin Feifei. Putting aside the fact that it could divert the attention of that group of people, the Qin family had some influence in Xi province. Qin Feifei's maternal family also had a certain background. Although Qin Yongchang was a despicable person, he truly loved his daughter. Qin Feifei wasn't Shi Mengwan. Moreover, it was just an engagement. It wouldn't affect anything. If he was rational, he would have agreed. Lowering his eyes, he rubbed his temples. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's solve the problem in front of us first. Boss? Tang Hua felt that it was a pity. This was a really good opportunity. All right. Zhang Haoze was not only thinking about the matter in front of him, but also other things. Tell old 6 and old 7 to hurry up. He was really impatient from waiting. Understood. Tang Hua looked at Zhang Haoze's expression and felt a little uncomfortable. Boss, don't worry. It's all temporary. When our troubles are resolved, you can be with sister-in-law. It was just that the troubles in front of them were not easy to solve. He knew, and so did Zhang Haoze. The carriage fell into silence. After a long time, Zhang Haoze turned his face and looked out of the window. They had already arrived at the Chun Corporation building. Thinking of Qin Yongcheng, that old fox, his face darkened. During this period of time, Qin Yongchang's movements are also very big. Be on guard. I know. Tang Hua thought of Qin Yongchang, and there was a hint of disdain on his lips. However, when the car stopped, all traces of those emotions disappeared. Zhang Hauze hadn't been in Lin City for a while, so there was a pile of work that he hadn't finished dealing with. For the whole morning, he was basically dealing with all kinds of official matters. Apart from the Qin Corporation's business, he was also responsible for several companies under his name. When it was almost lunchtime, Qin Feifei arrived. Brother Hao. Qin Feifei looked at Zhang Hauze and felt very wronged. Where have you been all this time? Why aren't you back yet? I went on a business trip. Zhang Hauze's voice was very soft. Qin Feifei found that it was very rare for Zhang Hauze to not smile at her for a long time, but his attitude today could be considered gentle. She was happy in her heart, and the pout on her face lessened a little. Brother Hao, do you know how much I miss you? You're always busy when I call you, and you don't reply to my messages. I almost thought something happened to you. Didn't I tell you? I'm on a business trip. Zhang Hauze looked at her. What's the matter? Can't I look for you if I have nothing to do? Qin Feifei stood in front of him. Brother Hao, you haven't eaten with me for a long time. No matter what, you have to eat with me today. I still have work here. Work, all you know is work. Qin Feifei pouted her lips. Work will never be finished. I want you to accompany me. She looked at the time and stepped forward to hold Zhang Hauze's hand. Let's go. It's almost time for dinner. You still have time to eat, right? Feifei, let's go. Qin Feifei pulled Zhang Hauze up. Zhang Hauze originally wanted to pull her hand away, but he didn't know what he thought of, but he let her pull him up and go outside. When he passed by the assistant's office, he happened to see Tang Hua. When Tang Hua saw his actions, he obviously heaved a sigh of relief. President Zhang. Yes. Zhang Hauze nodded. I'm going out to eat with Feifei. You keep an eye on the company. Yes. Tang Hua nodded and gave Zhang Hauze a look. President Zhang, be careful on the road. I'm afraid there will be a traffic jam at this time. I know. Qin Feifei looked at Tang Hua and then at Zhang Hauze. There will be a traffic jam at this time? It can't be, right? Let's go. Zhang Hauze brought Tang Hua downstairs. They went downstairs and got into the car. As expected, they saw a few tails behind them. Zhang Hauze narrowed his eyes. He didn't move. When Qin Feifei's face approached his arm, he didn't push her away. When they arrived at the restaurant, it was Qin Feifei's favorite restaurant. After entering the door, Zhang Hauze looked behind him from the corner of his eye. The car that was following them had already stopped on the opposite side of the road. There was a trace of mockery in Zhang Hauze's eyes. Brother Hao? What do you want to eat? Anything is fine. Zhang Hauze turned to look at Qin Feifei. It was rare that he didn't give her a cold face like before. Shi Mengwan went to the studio today. After a while, she would go to France to participate in the fashion design competition. Before that, she had to arrange the content of the studio. However, today, she was obviously a little absent-minded. She was thinking about what to eat tonight. She hadn't seen Zhang Hauze for so long. Should she make it more grand today? With this thought in mind, Shi Mengwan couldn't help but turn on her phone. Here, she downloaded an app that specialized in teaching people how to cook. Looking at the menu inside, Shi Mengwan left the company early to buy ingredients. When she got home, she started preparing dinner. She sent a message to Zhang Hauze, asking him to remember to come back for dinner. When Zhang Hauze received his message, he had just driven out of the Qin Corporation's building. In the Qin Corporation's building, Zhang Hauze had already gotten into the car. He was about to head in the direction of Shi Mengwan's house when he saw the people who had helped him shake off at noon following him again. Zhang Hauze's face darkened. Thinking about his apartment near the company, he turned the car around and drove in the direction of the apartment. During the rush hour, the traffic was very heavy. It wasn't easy for him to shake off those 3 cars. The car drove to the apartment. Because this was a high-end residential area, cars outside couldn't enter, so Zhang Hauze didn't have to worry about those people following him. After entering the underground parking lot, he went upstairs and changed his clothes. He disguised himself before going downstairs again. He changed his car and left from another exit. As expected, there were people guarding the other exit. He drove the car on the road, but the car behind him didn't move. When Jean Hauser arrived at Shi Mengwan's apartment, she had already waited for him for nearly 2 hours. Seeing Jean Hauser enter the door, Shi Mengwan's worry was half relieved, but she couldn't help but ask, "You've been at work until now?" Jean Hauser replied, but Shi Mengwan suddenly realized that something was wrong. Other than in bed, every time she saw Jean Hauser, he was wearing a suit and shirt. Today he was wearing a casual jacket. "You didn't wear this to work this morning?" Jean Hauser nodded. "I accidentally poured coffee on my clothes at the company, so I changed." In fact, he had put on a beard and a hat just now, but he had removed those disguises before coming up. Shi Mengwan felt that it was a little strange, but she couldn't tell what was strange. After thinking about it, she pulled Jean Hauser's hand. "Wait a moment. Dinner will be ready soon." Shi Mengwan gestured for him to wait for a while as she spoke, then she went to the kitchen. Her footsteps were a little fast. Jean Hauser didn't quite understand why she was in such a hurry until he saw the dining table. There was a candlestick on the white modern dining table. Beside the candlestick was a bouquet of white roses in an exquisite vase. It looked very festive. The tablecloths and cutlery had been laid out on both sides. From everything, it could be seen that Shi Mengwan had carefully arranged today's dinner. He still remembered the clothes she was wearing. A red, close-fitting dress. Jean Hauser couldn't help but get up and walk towards the kitchen. Shi Mengwan had just taken out the ingredients to process. When she saw him come in, her face was a little red. "You go out. I'll be ready soon." With him here, she would be too embarrassed to show off. Jean Hauser stood at the door and didn't move. He just stared at his face. Shi Mengwan felt more and more uncomfortable under his gaze. She reached out to push him. "Go out. Hurry up, go out." Jean Hauser pulled her hand over, lowered his head, and kissed her lips hard. He didn't go deeper and stopped after a brief kiss. "I'll wait for you." He finally left the kitchen. Shi Mengwan's face was a little red and a little hot. She patted her face to let her breathing and heartbeat return to normal. She turned around, looked at the ingredients on the cooking table, and began to work. She had tried frying steak before, but the taste was really only average. She only hoped that Jean Hauser wouldn't mind. Half an hour later, Shi Mengwan brought out the fried steak, the pasta she had made, and a salad. "It's ready to eat." She set everything up and looked at Jean Hauser, but he suddenly grabbed her hand. "I think you've also prepared wine?" Shi Mengwan's pretty face turned red. She had really prepared it. But when he said it directly, it gave her a feeling that he couldn't wait. She turned around shyly and took out the bottle of red wine from the wine cabinet. It's not a particularly expensive wine. She didn't know much about wine, so she just picked a relatively expensive bottle to buy. "It's okay." Jean Hauser stood up and watched her prepare all of this. He resisted the urge to go forward and hug her. Instead, he opened the wine and poured it for her and himself. Shi Mengwan sat down opposite him. The dining table wasn't big. She picked up her glass and clinked glasses with him. Jean Hauser took the glass from her hand and stared at her face with a burning gaze. "What's wrong?" Shi Mengwan felt uncomfortable under his gaze. "Is there something on my face?" Jean Hauser shook his head and gently clinked glasses with her. "I just have something to tell you." "What?" What was it that made her so serious? "From tomorrow onwards, our company has a lot of things to do. I might not be able to come here every day." He was able to leave his home and come here successfully today because those people hadn't reacted yet. Once they reacted, it wouldn't be so simple. "You can't come here every day?" Shi Mengwan bit her lip, as if she was thinking about the meaning behind his words. "Then how long will it take?" Jean Hauser didn't say anything. He wasn't willing to give her a promise. "It'll take some time." Shi Mengwan lowered her head and took a sip of wine. She didn't know much about wine, but now she felt that this wine was a little bitter. "Yes, did you encounter any problems?" Jean Hauser looked at her and shook his head gently. "It's just ordinary work. I'll be fine after I'm done with this." "Oh." Sure Mengwan didn't know what else to say. Let's eat. The meal was very quiet. Sure Mengwan even forgot to light the candle on the candlestick. She sat there, feeling inexplicably depressed. However, when she looked at Jean House's overly handsome facial features, she suppressed the depression in her heart. It didn't matter. There were also times when she didn't care about anything when she drew. This was just right. She was going to France to compete in a while, so it was good to take this time to prepare more. Although she thought so in her heart, her face still showed a reluctant expression. The food in front of her seemed to have become tasteless. The moment Jean House raised his head, he saw her expression. He picked up the wine and took a sip. He stood up and walked in front of her. He picked her up and placed her on his lap. Unhappy? Jean House turned her face and looked at her. Sure Mengwan bit her lip. If you want to be busy, go ahead. It just so happens that I have something to do too. So, I've been very busy recently. She blinked. For some reason, she just felt that Jean House wasn't telling the truth. But she didn't need him to tell the truth now. I'm going to France to compete next month. It just so happens that I need to prepare well during this period of time. Why don't you not come until I come back from France? With such a long time, it would be enough for him to finish his work, right? At this moment, her lips were suddenly kissed by Jean House. He grabbed her waist and easily put his hand under the hem of her red dress. Sure Mengwan looked at him and reached out to wrap her arms around his neck. Not here. However, Jean House didn't listen to her. He gently bit her lips and let go. Just here. His lips moved bit by bit to her ear. Not just here. There's also the kitchen, the living room, and the bathroom. Today, we'll do it in every place. Sure Mengwan felt her face burning. The hint in his words almost made her unable to control herself. This man didn't speak much, but the things he did and the words he occasionally said always made her feel that he was so indecent. However, she soon didn't have the energy to think more. Her body was squeezed open by him bit by bit. Her consciousness began to drift away from the ninth heaven. When Jean House left Sure Mengwan's apartment, he put on his disguise again. He returned to his apartment at dawn. When he entered the apartment, he was not surprised to see the few cars waiting for him at the entrance of the neighborhood last night. There was a flash of darkness in his eyes. After entering the door, he removed his disguise and took out his phone to make a call. The other party only asked someone to follow him, but he didn't ask anyone to make a move. What did that mean? Was he looking for an opportunity, or did he want to play a bigger game? No matter which it was, he would accompany him to the end. The moment the call was connected, he walked to the balcony and looked down at the few cars below. Help me do something. After hanging up the phone, his fingertips accidentally touched the photo album. There was a photo on it that had just been taken today. The faint light of the morning shone on Sure Mengwan's face. She was sleeping on the bed, her entire person peaceful and quiet. After staring at the photo for a while, Jean House saved the photo into an encrypted document. He put the phone aside. Sure Mengwan didn't expect Jean House to really not appear. When she woke up, he was already gone. There was still the dinner left by the two of them yesterday on the table. However, there was no trace of Jean House in the room. He didn't even buy her breakfast like usual. Her body was a little sore and uncomfortable. She sat on the sofa, curled her legs, and hugged her knees. She looked at the messy dining table for a long time and suddenly smiled. It wasn't like they hadn't been separated before. Why did she make it seem like they were separated forever this time? Sure Mengwan, don't be so pretentious. After a while, when Jean House is done with his work, he will come to find you. In the next half a month, she didn't see Jean House. He really didn't appear. Sure Mengwan's entry was almost ready. In a week, she would fly to France. Before that, Sure Mengwan went to Rong City to see Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang had been asking her to play since she went to Rong City in January, but Sure Mengwan wasn't free before. When she went to Rong City, Su Qingsang put down her work to play with her. In the evening, she also took her to meet Hua Jinyao's group of childhood friends. Unexpectedly, Jean House's childhood friend, Wan Xianyang, seemed to be interested in her. Before the party ended, he kept asking for her contact information. For Su Qingsang's sake, she didn't want to refuse too obviously. She had no choice but to give him her WeChat. In the next 2 days, Wan Xinyang contacted her time and time again, saying that he wanted to be her director. Shi Mengwan had Su Qingsang to accompany her, so she pushed him away if she could. When she really couldn't push him away, she would call Su Qingsang along. Fortunately, Hua Jinyao's friends were all good. Although Wan Xinyang's intentions were obvious, he didn't go too far. This also made Shi Mengwan heave a sigh of relief. After playing in Rome City for a few days, Shi Mengwan prepared to go to France. The visa and procedures were all done. Although she was a little reluctant to part with Su Qingsang, Shi Mengwan still returned to Lin City first. After returning home, Shi Mengwan called Zhan Haoze, but no one answered. She could only send a message instead. There was no reply. 2 days before going to France, Shi Mengwan went home to visit her parents. She told them that she was going to France. Although Shi Mengwan was worried, she had no reason to object to what her daughter wanted to do. Shi Mengwan accompanied her parents for a day. Before boarding the plane, she called Zhan Haoze again, but no one answered. After boarding the plane, Shi Mengwan took out her phone to look at the local news while waiting for the plane to take off. However, she saw such a piece of news on the public account of a certain news outlet. Mr. Zhan Haoze, a rising star in the city's technology industry, and Chen Feifei, the daughter of the Chen Corporation, held an engagement ceremony yesterday. Below was a detailed introduction about Zhan Haoze's identity and Chen Feifei's identity. There was also the situation of yesterday's engagement ceremony. Finally, was a company like the Chen Corporation also going to start entering the technology field? The accompanying picture was of Zhan Haoze, Chen Feifei, and Qin Yongchang's face. Chapter 675. Shi Mengwan sat there with her hand tightly gripping her phone. Her heart was beating very fast. She tried her best to remain calm, but it was very difficult. Love fascinates people, love makes people dizzy. She was blinded by love. She trusted Zhan Haoze blindly. His heart felt like it had been lightly stabbed by someone, and it hurt slightly. Feeling a little uncomfortable, she put down the phone and clutched her chest. Every scene and every moment after her reunion with Zhan Haoze appeared in her mind one by one. She pressed on the position of her heart to calm herself down. Shi Mengwan, you are going to participate in the competition now. Let's talk about these matters of love when you come back. The plane landed. Assistant Xiao Ji and designer Tong Yen came to pick her up. This time, she was participating in the competition in the name of her studio. Apart from herself, she let little Ji and Tong Yen come over first to play the vanguard. Sister Shi, are you too tired from the flight? Xiao Ji had arrived the day before. She had come in advance and arranged a car. Now that he saw Shi Mengwan's expression wasn't good, he thought that she was too tired from the long flight. Not bad. How have you been these 2 days? Not bad. The one who spoke was Tong Yen. She had been here for 2 days and looked around. This is indeed the fashion capital. It's quite rewarding. Well, it's good that we got something. Let's go back to the hotel first. Shi Mengwan sorted out her emotions in just a few sentences. She wasn't alone. She had more important things to do right now. After getting into the car, Shi Mengwan and Tong Yen talked about the competition again. The fashion design competition was held in Paris, the fashion capital. When Tong Yen arrived, there were already quite a number of participants. It was a gathering of designers from more than a dozen countries around the world. Among the people who came, there were already those who had passed the preliminary round. Next was the semifinals and the finals. Every match had a theme. In order to complete the work, it had to fit the theme of the competition. Then, from these works that fit the theme, the judges would pick out the 10 that they felt were the best. Then the finals would be held among these 10 people. The semifinals and finals would last for half a month. In other words, they had to stay in France for half a month. Shi Mengwan knew about this before. Although she didn't know what the next 2 topics were, she was confident in herself. Little Ji was booked into a hotel near the competition venue. Little Ji shared a room with Tong Yen. Shi Mengwan's room was right next to theirs. After entering the door, she motioned for them to rest for a while. She wanted to take a shower and change her clothes. When the door closed, Shi Mengwan was left alone. She finally didn't have to hide her emotions anymore. Throwing herself on the bed, Shi Mengwan's mood was extremely low. The afternoon of the second day Shi Mengwan arrived was the time to announce the theme of the semifinals. After the announcement, all the contestants would be given 3 days to submit their works. 3 days later, the judges would use 1 day to vote and announce the list of people who had passed the semifinals. Then, the submission time for the finalists was 7 days. The time given to the designer was quite short. Therefore, the organizing committee of the semifinals did not require the contestants to design the finished product. Instead, they only required the contestants to draw the design. However, the works to be submitted in the finals included the design drawings, the source of the design, and the finished product. Of course, all the materials needed for the finals would be provided by the organizing committee. When Shi Mengwan appeared in front of Xiao Ji and Tong Yan again, she looked radiant again. She put on makeup and went to the organizing committee to fill in the form and get back the theme. The theme of this season is sweet. When she saw this theme, Shi Mengwan felt a little dizzy. She couldn't be sweet at all now. After she came to France, it wasn't that she hadn't thought of calling Jean Hauser. She wanted to ask him what was going on. How could he be engaged to another woman? But her dignity didn't allow her to ask. She retracted her thoughts and looked at the requirements on the design theme. Shi Mengwan bit her lip. Was it sweet? 3 o'clock was very tight. It was so tight that Shi Mengwan didn't have time to think about why Jean Hauser was engaged to another woman. In the past 3 days, she had hardly left her room. Every day, she had been drawing, and drawing. After 3 days, Shi Mengwan submitted the design draft. Before the judges voted, Shi Mengwan, who was extremely tired, told Tong Yan and Xiao Ji not to disturb her and slept for the whole day. Later, she was woken up by a knock on the door. She got up and looked at the time. It was already night time. She had slept for a while and her spirit had recovered quite well. It was just that she felt hungry after sleeping for too long. She was thinking about going downstairs to eat something later when there was a knock on the door again. She thought it was Xiao Ji or Tong Yan. She didn't expect to open the door and see Wan Xianyang standing outside. "It's you?" Shi Mengwan had just woken up. Her hair was messy and her clothes were a little wrinkled. In such a state, it was completely unsuitable for her to meet guests. She resisted the urge to close the door and took a small step back. "Good evening, Mengwan." Shi Mengwan's expression didn't look that good. "What's the matter?" Wan Xianyang stood at the door. "Aren't you going to invite me in for a seat? It's not convenient." Shi Mengwan's words were a little heartless. Looking at Wan Xianyang, it was obvious that he had come to look for her. "Okay, it's fine." Wan Xianyang wasn't angry. He placed his hand behind him. On it was a bouquet of extremely beautiful heart-shaped roses. Shi Mengwan was a little embarrassed. "Wan Xianyang. Flowers for a beauty." Wan Xianyang forcefully handed the flowers to Shi Mengwan. "You haven't eaten, have you? If you don't mind, how about having dinner with me?" Shi Mengwan wanted to refuse, but Wan Xianyang spoke slyly. "I asked the waiter. They said that you haven't gone downstairs all day. You didn't order food either, so you should be hungry, right?" Shi Mengwan's brows furrowed, but Wan Xianyang seemed to know what she was thinking. "I'm sorry, I made my own decision. However, the owner of this hotel is a friend of mine, so he gave me some convenience." His attitude was quite sincere. Shi Mengwan couldn't even find a reason to refuse. "There's no hurry." Wan Xianyang was quite gentlemanly. "I'll wait for you." As he spoke, he took the initiative to take a step back. With a faint smile on his face, he raised his hand gently and gestured for Shi Mengwan to help herself. Shi Mengwan closed the door in a dilemma. She looked at the large bouquet of roses in her hand and placed it on the coffee table. After staring at the bouquet of flowers for nearly a minute, Shi Mengwan suddenly smiled. Forget it, it was just a meal. Moreover, Wan Xianyang was Hu Jinyao's childhood friend. She would have a meal with him and then explain things clearly. Even if she wasn't with Jean Hauser, she didn't have the intention to start a new relationship for the time being. He cleaned himself up as fast as he could and changed his clothes. When Shi Mengwan came out of the room, she was not surprised to see Wan Xianyang's stunned gaze. How about French food? Wan Xianyang suggested. Shi Mengwan felt that it was too long, but Wan Xianyang smiled. You came to France to participate in the competition. I think you haven't tried authentic French food during this period of time, right? Shi Mengwan indeed hadn't. She realized that Wan Xianyang was indeed a businessman. His ability to be watertight was even better than Xiao Qi's. Let's go. I know there's a Michelin-starred restaurant that tastes pretty good. It's nearby. Half an hour later, Shi Mengwan and Wan Xianyang sat in the restaurant. The environment in front of them was quite good. Shi Mengwan's nervous mood these few days was more or less relaxed because of this elegant environment. I came to France that year and accidentally discovered this restaurant. Later, as long as I came to France, I would definitely come. Shi Mengwan heard Wan Xianyang speak French to the waiter quite well. Her French wasn't very good, so she could only understand some simple greetings. Do you come to France often? He spoke French so fluently. Often. Wan Xianyang nodded and moved his body slightly closer. Do you know why? Shi Mengwan shook her head. She knew that Hu Jinyao was very rich. His friend wasn't a simple person. I told you last time that our family is in the antique business. You also know that over the years, there have been a lot of treasures in our country that have been lost outside. So every time there's an auction here, I'll come over. Shi Mengwan looked at Wan Xianyang and her impression of him changed. I didn't know that you were quite patriotic. How should I put it? Those patriotic overseas Chinese are very dedicated to these things. So I'll do my best. Shi Mengwan nodded. She wasn't familiar with Wan Xianyang, and Wan Xianyang didn't mention what had happened before. He only talked about some of the things he had encountered at the auction. This was a field that Shi Mengwan had never come into contact with before. It was quite new to her. For a moment, she actually felt that listening to Wan Xianyang's words was quite interesting. French cuisine was famous for taking a long time. Shi Mengwan didn't feel bored after eating the meal. Her nerves, which hadn't been able to relax from rushing to draw, were also relaxed a lot because of this delicious meal. After coming out of the restaurant, Shi Mengwan looked at Wan Xianyang and thanked him very seriously. Wan Xianyang, thank you. Thank me for what? Wan Xianyang looked at her with a mischievous smile in his eyes. Thank me for treating you to a meal? You don't have to thank me. You can treat me tomorrow. Okay. Shi Mengwan didn't refuse. She should have treated him back. The weather is good today. Do you want to take a walk? Shi Mengwan wanted to refuse, but Wan Xianyang made a gesture of invitation. She thought for a moment and followed beside him. The temperature in Paris was still very low at this season. It was only in the teens. Lin City was already in the 30s. But Paris was so cold. Shi Mengwan really wasn't used to it. Tightening the coat on her body, Shi Mengwan couldn't be happy when she thought that she would have to stay here for a few more days. Wan Xianyang took off his windbreaker and was about to put it on her. Shi Mengwan was shocked and subconsciously took a step back. Wan Xianyang's action of holding the coat stopped in midair. He looked at Shi Mengwan as if he knew that he was being abrupt. Sorry, I just thought that you would be cold. I'm not cold. Shi Mengwan felt that it was time to make things clear to Wan Xianyang. Wan Xianyang. She stood at the intersection and looked at his face under the street lamp. Seriously speaking, Wan Xianyang wasn't bad-looking, had good qualifications, and was a good person. But sometimes, feelings really couldn't be explained clearly. Wan Xianyang. I know that it might not be appropriate for me to say this. You might even think that I'm being self-sentimental, but I really want to say that the two of us aren't suitable. Wan Xianyang didn't expect her to be so direct. He was a little surprised, but after the surprise, there was a faint smile on his face. Are you rejecting me? I guess so. Shi Mengwan nodded. I just don't want you to waste time on me. You're not me. How do you know that I'm wasting time? But I don't like you. Shi Mengwan was very direct. Her personality was like this. If she liked him, then she liked him. If she didn't like him, then she didn't like him. Wang Xianyang took a step forward and looked at Shi Mingwan's face. Before he came, he specially asked Su Qingsang to do his homework and asked a lot of people. Everything that happened today, whether it was what flowers to send or where to eat, he had carefully arranged everything. However, he didn't expect such a result. You don't like me, but I like you. I think that's enough. Maybe one day you'll like me? That's impossible. Shi Mingwan's words were quite absolute. Wang Xianyang looked at her. Do you have someone you like? Yes. Do I know him? No. Wang Xianyang looked at her and suddenly said, You didn't deliberately make up such a person to make me give up, did you? Shi Mingwan didn't want to say more. Anyway, I have someone I like. I can't forget him in a short period of time, so don't waste time on me. There's something wrong with your argument. Wang Xianyang waved his hand and didn't take her words to heart at all. If I don't succeed with you in the end, it'll be a waste of time. But if I move you in the end and you get together with me, it'll be worth it. How can it be a waste of time? Wang Xianyang? Shi Mingwan was speechless by his words. All right, it's getting late. I'll send you back to rest. Wang Xianyang. Let's go. Wang Xianyang obviously didn't want to listen to her, so Shi Mingwan didn't say anything else. The two of them walked back along the road. Wang Xianyang looked at the hotel building not far away in front of them. His attitude was different from yesterday. When they were about to reach the hotel, Shi Mingwan's foot suddenly tripped over something and she was about to fall. Wang Xianyang supported her body in time. Are you okay? I'm fine. Shi Mingwan stood firm and was glad that she didn't wear high heels today. Thank you. Ming, you don't have to be so polite to me. Wang Xianyang was serious for a while before he became a little sloppy again. Shi Mingwan seemed to be used to him being like this, so she wasn't very surprised. She stood properly and didn't refuse when Wang Xianyang said that he wanted to send her back to her room. Ming, can I still come to see you tomorrow? I have something to do tomorrow. Tomorrow was the announcement of the shortlist. Only 10 people could be shortlisted. 1 week after the shortlist, she could bring 2 assistants to the venue specially arranged for the finalists. Whether she could be shortlisted or not, she would only know tomorrow. If she could, then she would naturally be busy next. If she couldn't, then she would really be free. It's okay. I know you're here for the competition. I can wait for you to finish the competition. Shi Mingwan didn't reply. After saying goodbye to Wang Xianyang, she entered the room. She walked to the sofa and sat down. Looking at the big bouquet of roses, her emotions were very complicated. She couldn't help but think of Zhang Haoze again. During the time she was with him, Zhang Haoze didn't seem to have given her roses. She sighed in her heart. Actually, it didn't matter what he gave her. It was only at this time that she could tell that Zhang Haoze really didn't have her in his heart. Otherwise, why would he be engaged to another woman? She got up to take a shower and rest. There was a knock on the door. She thought it was Wang Xianyang who had returned. Without much hesitation, she went forward and opened the door. When she saw who the tall figure outside the door was, she closed the door without hesitation. However, her movements were still a beat too slow. Before she closed the door, Zhang Haoze entered the door first. Without saying a word, Shi Mingwan began to push her away, trying to push her out. Zhang Haoze easily pulled her hands into his arms and turned around. At the same time the door was closed, her body was also pressed against the door. Shi Mingwan was anxious. She raised her foot and kicked Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze held her hand and wanted to block her foot. She struggled very hard, so he wasn't paying attention and was actually kicked by her. After the kick, Shi Mingwan used even more force. She raised her other foot and kicked him. Although she wasn't wearing high heels, she was wearing a pair of pointed shoes today. It was also very painful to kick someone. Zhang Haoze was kicked twice by her. When she was about to kick him for the 3rd time, he lifted her body up. In 3 steps, he carried her body to the side of the bed and threw her down. The soft bed made Shi Mingwan's body bounce a few times. Just as she steadied herself, she raised her foot and kicked his body again. Shi Mingwan, what are you doing? Even Zhang Haoze couldn't help but press down on her body. He pressed down tightly and didn't let her move anymore. He held her hands together and raised them above his head, looking into her eyes. "What are you doing?" He had been very busy during this period of time. When he had some time to look for her, he realized that Shi Mengwan wasn't at home. She had gone abroad to participate in some competition. "Am I messing around?" "Yes, if I'm messing around, you can go find someone who doesn't mess around." Shi Mengwan glared at him with a gloomy gaze. "Jean Hauser, get lost. I don't want to see you." Jean Hauser's brows were tightly furrowed. Looking at the anger on Shi Mengwan's face, he seemed to be a little puzzled. "Are you angry that I haven't come to see you during this period of time?" "Who's angry?" Shi Mengwan didn't want to talk to him anymore. "I don't have time to be angry with you. Get out of the way. I said I don't want to see you." "Shi Mengwan." Shi Mengwan closed her eyes. Yes, she should have understood long ago. Look at how Jean Hauser addressed her. He had always called her by her full name. Did he really have feelings for her? Did he really like her? Did he really love her? I'll say it again. Jean Hauser, get out. Chapter 676. I do. Jean Hauser didn't believe her at all. He only felt that Shi Mengwan's actions were because he hadn't come to see her for a long time and was throwing a tantrum. "Call me. This person." "Really?" Shi Mengwan suddenly pressed the 3 numbers. After pressing it, the moment the call was connected, she spoke in fluent English. "Hello, I'm at XX Hotel, room 1-3. Before she could finish her sentence, the phone was snatched away by Jean Hauser. He looked at her and couldn't believe that she was serious. "Shi Mengwan? Do you know what you're doing?" "Of course I know what I'm doing. It's someone who doesn't know what I'm doing. It's you." She glared at Jean Hauser. She had been suppressing her uncomfortable emotions for the past few days. At this moment, she didn't want to suppress them anymore. "Jean Hauser, is it fun to be two-timing? Is it fun to bully me like this?" As she spoke, the great anger from when she knew that he was engaged surged in her heart. Without thinking, she raised her foot and kicked him again. Jean Hauser, who was shocked by Shi Mengwan's words just now, was still thinking about her words. He didn't pay attention and actually let Shi Mengwan kick him. Jean Hauser was kicked and had no choice but to leave her body. Shi Mengwan took this opportunity to quickly get up from the bed and dodge to the side. She sat up and looked at Jean Hauser with a defensive expression and resentment. "Jean Hauser, you can't bully me like this." Perhaps because she had suppressed it for too long, Shi Mengwan's tone was filled with grievance. But very quickly she suppressed this grievance. Let bygones be bygones. But now, she didn't want to continue like this. "I don't want to see you." As she spoke, she pointed at the door, wanting Jean Hauser to get lost. Jean Hauser sat on the bed and didn't move. His brows furrowed slightly, as if he had thought of something. Two-timing? At this time, he was still playing dumb. Shi Mengwan nodded and went forward to take the phone. After taking the phone, she quickly retreated, as if she wasn't afraid that Jean Hauser would pounce on her. She turned on the phone and found yesterday's news. She directly placed it in front of Jean Hauser. On the phone screen, Jean Hauser stood with Chen Feifei, while Chen Yongchang stood beside Chen Feifei. The 3 of them smiled brightly. The accompanying article was the news of their engagement. Shi Mengwan's gaze was slightly cold as she stared straight at Jean Hauser. Now that things had come to this, what else could he say? He said that there was nothing between him and Chen Feifei. He asked her to give him time. She believed him, gave him time, and the result? Jean Hauser's eyes darkened when he saw the photo. He knew about this photo. He also knew about this news, but he didn't expect Shi Mengwan to see it. "Nothing to say? If you have nothing else to say, then leave." She didn't want to hear it from him either. It was true that she longed for love and wanted to be with him. But she didn't want to be looked down upon. She didn't want to be a shameful mistress. Even if according to the chronological order, she should have arrived first. She casually threw her phone aside. Shi Mengwan still had things to do tomorrow, so she didn't want to waste her time with Jean Hauser. "Leave." Jean Hauser got up and got out of bed. Shi Mengwan thought that he was going to leave, but he walked to her side and hugged her. Jean Hauser. He didn't want to use this trick all the time. Shi Mengwan struggled up and raised her foot to kick Jean Hauser again. He dodged this kick, and Shi Mengwan used her elbow to hit his abdomen. She heard a muffled groan. She didn't stop. She didn't use much strength. What was he doing? However, when she saw Jean Hauser bend down, she thought he was pretending. Jean Hauser, go out. I don't want to see you. Jean Hauser didn't say anything. His hand kept covering his abdomen, and his face seemed to be in pain. Shi Mengwan was still calm at first, but when she saw that he was really in pain, she couldn't hold back the coldness on her face anymore. Stop pretending. If you're fine, go out. I don't want to see you. Jean Hauser shook his head. He reached out to hug her. Only then did Shi Mengwan remember the situation in front of her and pushed him hard again. He was pushed back a step by her, and his back hit the edge of the table in the hotel room. Shi Mengwan's lips moved. She wanted to say that she should be careful, but she thought that she didn't have much strength at all. He must be pretending. But when she saw the blood flowing out from between Jean Hauser's fingers, she was shocked and went forward without thinking. Are you hurt? Jean Hauser raised his head and looked at her. Ignoring the blood on his body, he reached out and hugged her. Jean Hauser, what was he doing at a time like this? I'm not engaged to her. Although everyone thought that way, this engagement was the wishful thinking of the Qin father and daughter. In the past half a month, there had been frequent movements. Some were aimed at him, and some were aimed at Qin Feifei. It was fine to target Qin Feifei, but there was only one. After all, Qin Feifei's uncle was quite powerful in Xi province. However, there were many movements aimed at him. Before he decided to come to France, half of it was because he did it on purpose, and the other half was because he wanted to divert the other party's attention. Therefore, when the other party came looking for him, he didn't avoid it. Instead, he directly accepted the other party's provocation. He deliberately took the knife in his stomach. The strength and direction were calculated accurately. It wouldn't be fatal, but he would suffer a little. Sure enough, after he was injured, the other party's movements immediately stopped. He probably didn't expect him to be so weak that he would be injured so easily. It was also because he was injured that the other party's movement stopped. That was why he had the time to come to France to look for Shi Mengwan. However, he didn't expect Shi Mengwan to have such a reaction when he came. Where are you hurt? Shi Mengwan didn't want to care about whether he was engaged or not. She remembered that he was very skilled. Ordinary people shouldn't be able to hurt him, so how did he get injured? It's a small injury. Since it's a small injury, let's go. Shi Mengwan retreated from his arms and didn't look at him at all. Get out. Jean Hauser let go of his hand and looked at his abdomen. He came to France and was wearing a casual suit. Inside was a beige shirt. The shirt was already stained with blood, and blood leaked out from between his fingers. Shi Mengwan turned her face away and wanted to say, "Get out," again. However, her absent-minded mind took a step forward and walked in front of Jean Hauser. She bent down and took Jean Hauser's hand away. She unbuttoned his shirt. She saw that there was a circle of gauze wrapped around his abdomen. The gauze was now completely red. She pursed her lips into a straight line and stared at the wound for a long time. She turned around and pressed the front desk to ask them to send the first aid kit up. When the other party asked if he needed a doctor, she thought about it and agreed. When the doctor came, she asked Jean Hauser to lie down. Don't stand. Lie down. The doctor will be here later. You're not going to chase me away? Jean Hauser's words made Shi Mengwan look sideways. She stared at his face for a long time and finally shook her head. After the doctor sees your injury, you can leave. 1-1. Jean Hauser's address made Shi Mengwan's heart tremble. It seemed that ever since the two of them got together, he hadn't called her name like this. I'm not engaged to Qin Feifei. Shi Mengwan lowered her head in disbelief. Jean Hauser took 2 steps forward to approach her, but she raised her hand. Don't move. Lie down. The worry in her eyes was too obvious. Jean Hauser looked at her for a while, then finally listened to her and lay down on the bed. His hand was still pressed on the wound. It was no longer bleeding. Soon, the hotel waiter brought a doctor up. Shi Mengwan was worried that Zhang Hao's injury was too serious and that she wouldn't be able to handle it well. When the doctor arrived, she heaved a sigh of relief. The doctor untied the gauze on Zhang Hao's waist. Only then did Shi Mengwan see that there was a wound about 5 centimeters long on his abdomen. The wound had already been stitched up, but it was still bleeding faintly. She wasn't sure if it was because she had pushed him just now or something else. At this moment, her eyes were a little red. The doctor treated Zhang Hao's wound again and bandaged it. Finally, he gave some instructions on what to take note of. What surprised Shi Mengwan was that Zhang Hao could actually speak fluent French. This made her unable to help but look sideways. After sending the doctor away, Shi Mengwan asked the waiter to change the blood-stained bedsheets. She looked at Zhang Hao and wanted to chase him away. Zhang Hao had already laid down on the bed first. Shi Mengwan took 2 steps forward. Zhang Hao, you can't sleep here. You, Wanwan. Zhang Hao reached out and held her hand. He looked at her with his usual cold face, but there was a hint of gentleness and fatigue in his eyes. I'm very tired. During this period of time, apart from those people who wanted to deal with him in the open and in the dark, he had also suffered a lot of interference in his work. Whether it was in Lin City or Qing City, he still had a lot of things to do. However, because he hadn't seen her for a long time, he ignored the injuries on his body and flew for more than 10 hours to see her. He didn't rest on the plane. Instead, he dealt with some very important business matters first. This time, he was really tired. Wanwan, let me sleep for a while. When he said this, Shi Mengwan finally noticed that other than the injuries on his body, there was a faint shadow under his eyes. Her lips moved. She wanted herself to be more heartless and harden her heart, but she couldn't do it no matter what. She could only watch as Zhang Hao closed his eyes. His hand was still holding her hand. Sleep with me for a while, okay? Zhang Hao didn't even open his eyes. He just held Shi Mengwan's hand and didn't let go. Shi Mengwan stood by the bed and looked at Zhang Hao, who seemed to have lost a little weight. She didn't sleep as he wished. Instead, she withdrew her hand and took a step back. Zhang Hao looked at her with half-opened eyes. At this moment, Zhang Hao unexpectedly made Shi Mengwan feel fragile. Fragile? How was that possible? That was definitely not an emotion that should appear on Zhang Hao. In her heart, this person was similar to a robot. How could he be fragile? He called her again. This time, Shi Mengwan decided not to be affected by him. She turned around and went straight to the bathroom. Her footsteps were very fast. After entering the bathroom, she quickly closed the door. She placed her hands on the edge of the sink and stared at her face in the mirror. Don't be soft-hearted. Don't believe it. That man was already someone else's now. If you were soft-hearted, it would be equivalent to harming yourself again. Absolutely not. Shi Mengwan was in a bad mood. She took more than 10 minutes to take a shower than usual before coming out. She was wrapped in a hotel bathrobe. When she saw Zhang Hao, his eyes were tightly closed. His breathing was long and balanced, as if he had really fallen asleep. Shi Mengwan walked to the bedside and stood still, staring at Zhang Hao's face. Many thoughts flashed through her mind, such as shaking him awake and telling him to leave. Or perhaps she simply went to get another room. However, when she saw the injury on Zhang Hao's abdomen, she temporarily put down those thoughts and suppressed them. She closed her eyes and finally lay down beside him helplessly. She stared at the side of Zhang Hao's face, unable to calm down. Shi Mengwan thought that she wouldn't be able to sleep, and she also thought that she would toss and turn for the whole night. But in reality, she slept very soundly. No matter how much she didn't want to deny it, she couldn't escape the reality in her heart. Where Zhang Hao was, she could always sleep more peacefully. Early morning. Shi Mengwan woke up. When she opened her eyes, she saw Zhang Hao's enlarged face in front of her. He was staring at her. At the same time that she woke up, he lowered his head and kissed her lips. Shi Mengwan subconsciously avoided him. She looked at him and moved her body to the side. Zhang Hao supported himself with one hand on the bed. He looked at her movements and moved a little in her direction. Shi Mengwan quickly got up and sat 2 arms away from him. Her gaze shifted slightly to prevent herself from looking at him. Your injury should be fine now. You can leave. Shi Mengwan didn't plan to continue like this. Her body moved, but before she could leave, she was already pressed down by Zhang Haoze. In the next second, she was pressed down by him. I'm not engaged. He looked into her eyes and said very seriously. His eyes were deep and focused. To her, they were fatally attractive. She knew that what he said might not be the truth, and she didn't intend to believe him. She wanted to struggle, but when she thought that Zhang Haoze was injured, she could only stop. Really? Does it have anything to do with me? Shi Mengwan forced herself to turn her face away. Who are you to me? Whether you're engaged or not, and which woman you're with, you don't need to tell me. Zhang Haoze's brows furrowed slightly. Wan. Don't call me. Shi Mengwan seemed to have made up her mind. She turned around and looked at him. Zhang Haoze, you said that you're not engaged? Yes. You said that you have nothing to do with Chen Feifei? Yes. Then tell me, who am I to you? Zhang Haoze paused for a moment and looked at Shi Mengwan's delicate and beautiful face. He said 3 words very slowly, girlfriend. I'm your girlfriend? Yes. Was she not? You said I'm your girlfriend. Shi Mengwan suddenly reached out to hold his face and looked into his eyes very seriously. Then, do you dare to publicize our relationship? Publicize it to the entire Lin City. Tell everyone that you're my man and I'm your woman? Do you dare? Do you dare to let everyone know that I'm your girlfriend? Chapter 677. In a quiet room, 2 men were lying on the same bed. One was on top, and the other was on bottom. The posture was ambiguous, but the atmosphere was completely different. Zhang Haoze didn't expect Shi Mengwan to ask such a question. The air suddenly became silent. He still had an injury on his abdomen. After supporting himself like this for a long time, it caused a slight throbbing pain. His expression changed slightly because of the pain. In Shi Mengwan's eyes, this change directly became proof that he didn't want to admit his identity. Shi Mengwan sneered. It seemed that she was no exception to this result. She let go of her hand and gently pushed him to the side. She was about to get up when Zhang Haoze grabbed her hand again. Wan. Let go. It's not what you think. Zhang Haoze rarely explained to others. His brothers had been with him for a long time. There were many things that he didn't need to say or explain. They would directly execute them, and very few people would question his words. Then what is it? Tell me, I'll listen. Shi Mengwan waited for him to explain. Even if she really wanted to be with him, she hoped that she could understand his thoughts. Even if they couldn't be together, she hoped that the breakup could be done cleanly. Zhang Haoze had been supporting himself for a long time. At this moment, he simply sat up and pulled her to sit up with him. His movements affected his wound. He snorted in a very low voice. Shi Mengwan seemed to have only realized at this moment that Zhang Haoze was injured. She turned her face away and forced herself not to soften and not to give in. Wan, I can't disclose our relationship for the time being. Shi Mengwan sneered and turned her face away. She felt that it was a matter of course. She knew that this person was just saying it to sound nice. I'm sorry. Zhang Haoze rarely said sorry to anyone. There were even fewer women who could make him say sorry. Zhang Haoze thought of Zhang Kun, the Zhang family in Qing City, and his current situation. He closed his eyes. Chen Feifei has heart disease. She can't stand stimulation. I owe her father a debt of gratitude. So, I can't leave the Chen family for the time being. Shi Mengwan turned around and looked at Zhang Haoze. She just stared at him. She has heart disease. She likes you and wants to be engaged to you, so you agreed? I didn't agree. In fact, ever since Chen Feifei had a relapse, Qin Yongchang had been wanting them to get engaged. But he didn't agree. He didn't want to agree either. But later, Chen Feifei was almost attacked. Chen Feifei was scared half to death because of this. Her heart wasn't good to begin with, so Qin Yongchang decided to get them engaged. But perhaps she was afraid that he would be unhappy if he knew. Qin Yongchang didn't tell him. Instead, he said that the Chun Corporation was holding an anniversary meeting. The Qin Corporation's anniversary celebration was around the same time. As the general manager of the Chun Corporation, it was impossible for Zhang Haoze not to attend. When he went to Juanxia, he found out that Qin Yongchang and Qin Feifei actually wanted them to get engaged to him, and they didn't reveal any news between them. At that time, it was impossible for Zhang Haoze to leave just like that, so when Qin Yongchang asked him to go on stage, he could only go up. After that, Qin Yongchang said a lot of good things to him in private. After explaining for a long time, he finally said that if he really didn't want to, he could wait until Qin Feifei's body got better and then break off the engagement with her. As for the current situation, it was better to let Qin Feifei rest well and recuperate. This way, even if Zhang Haoze didn't agree, it would still cause the fact that they were engaged. But in his heart, he didn't agree. It's not what you think between me and her. I understand, it's not what I think. It's just that you want to repay her kindness. At this point, Shi Mengwan sneered. But Zhang Haoze, the Qin family is kind to you. Qin Feifei has heart disease. What does that have to do with me? Since you pity her so much and can't bear to part with her, then you can go to her side and take good care of her. Why are you looking for me? Wan, do you know what your behavior is called? Shi Mengwan said bluntly. A scumbag. Shi Mengwan. Zhang Haoze looked at her, his face full of disapproval. Shi Mengwan smiled, but that smile didn't reach her eyes at all. Aren't you a scumbag? You're afraid of hurting Qin Feifei, but you're still hanging on to me? Do I owe you? Why should I swallow my anger like this? Or is it that in your heart, I'm so easy to deceive? That I can let you do whatever you want? I didn't mean that. But you've already done it. Shi Mengwan's face was full of mockery, and she didn't give in at all. Aren't you afraid of hurting Qin Feifei while hanging on to me? Zhang Haoze looked at Shi Mengwan and didn't explain. In fact, he couldn't explain. Because of the real reason, he couldn't let her know at all. I'm not afraid of hurting Qin Feifei. I just don't want to be an ungrateful person. The Qin family is kind to me. Although I don't like Qin Feifei, I don't want anything to happen to her. Yes, you can't let anything happen to her, so you can let something happen to me. Shi Mengwan couldn't take it anymore. She turned around and was about to get off the bed when Zhang Haoze held her hand. Don't do this. Then what do you want me to do? Shi Mengwan shook his hand off. Accept the truth? Accept the fact that you have to take care of another woman's emotions when you're with me? I didn't. Don't say you didn't mean that. Just tell me directly, how long do you plan to take care of her? How long do you plan to hide our relationship? Zhang Haoze didn't avoid this question. Instead, he looked at Shi Mengwan very seriously. It won't be too long. Give me some time, I'll solve it. Unfortunately, I don't believe you. Zhang Haoze's face darkened because of her words. Shi Mengwan didn't want to continue. She left the bed and stood on the other side of the bed. Alright, that's it. Zhang Haoze, you go your own way, and I'll go my own way. He liked to take care of Qin Feifei, so he would take care of her. She wasn't going to accompany him anymore. She still had to go to the organizing committee to see the results of the semi-finals today, so she didn't have time to waste with Zhang Haoze here. After entering the bathroom, she washed up and changed her clothes. Shi Mengwan came out and prepared to leave. Zhang Haoze stood up at this moment. All right, Zhang Haoze. He had already said a lot today. Don't say any more. Either you break up with me, and we won't have anything to do with each other, or you stay away from Qin Feifei. Go back to Lin City and announce that you're not engaged. Everything is a misunderstanding. How about that? Zhang Haoze's face darkened. At this time, he couldn't do that. While he was silent and hesitant, Shi Mengwan had already picked up her bag and walked to the door. When she was about to leave, Zhang Haoze stood in front of her again. Zhang Haoze, I'll say it again. Either you do what you promised me, or you leave this place. There is no third option. Her hand rose, and she thought about pushing him away. The moment she raised her hand, she thought of the tattoo on his body. Gritting her teeth, she walked right past him and left. This time, Zhang Haoze didn't stop her. When she got out of the door, she was relieved, but at the same time, she felt a sense of loss. She believed what John Hauser said was true. He was such a proud person that he disdained to lie. But so what if what he said was true? What could it change? Chen Feifei had heart disease and needed him to take care of her. She was not in good health. Did he have to take care of her all the time? Take care of him one day at a time, and 1 year at a time. He really valued relationships. Unfortunately, she didn't want to waste her time with him. Sister Shi, you're up so early? Just as she went out, Xiao Ji and Tong Yen had already woken up and were here. Sister Shi, are you very nervous? I'm not nervous. Shi Mengwan shook her head. Compared to what she was worried about, there was really nothing to be nervous about. If we can pass, then we'll pass. If we can't, then we'll just play for a few days as a vacation. Thinking about it this way, there's nothing bad about it. Sister Shi, your mentality is really good. Xiao Ji almost wanted to worship her. Shi Mengwan smiled, and her depressed mood was suppressed again. Let's go. What surprised Shi Mengwan was that she actually passed the semifinals. Among the 10 finalists, she was in the 9th place, as it was said that the rankings were not separated. This was really great news for her. Xiao Ji and Tong Yen were extremely happy. The two of them hugged her and congratulated her repeatedly. Shi Mengwan smiled. This was what they meant by frustrated in love, but successful in career, right? She passed the semifinals. Next, the 10 people who passed were ready to participate in the finals. We've already prepared the venue for the finals. For the next 7 days, you need to stay in the place we've prepared. You'll draw here, make the finished product, and walk until you've finished your work. Because the venue is a little far, you can go back and pack your things now. Gather here in the afternoon. We'll have a car to send you to the venue. The people from the organizing committee explained the rules again. Shi Mengwan, Xiao Ji, and the others all memorized it very seriously. After memorizing it, they decided to go back to the hotel to pack their luggage first and then come over to gather in the afternoon. Shi Mengwan, Xiao Ji, and the others returned to the hotel. Xiao Ji stood at the door of the room and looked at Shi Mengwan. Sister Shi, do you want us to help you pack? No need. Shi Mengwan shook her head. You guys go pack your things. We'll go out for a meal later. Okay, Sister Shi. It's still early anyway. We can come back after dinner and rest for a while. Shi Mengwan nodded. Now, she just didn't know where the organizing committee would arrange for them. After entering the door, Shi Mengwan thought that Jean Hauser had already left. She didn't expect him to still be in the room. Seeing that he hadn't left yet, Shi Mengwan's expression didn't look too good. Why haven't you left yet? Jean Hauser stood up. Wanwan, don't call me. Shi Mengwan took a step back. Just as she was about to open the door and let him leave, someone knocked on the door first. Shi Mengwan was shocked. She stood at the door and wasn't in a hurry to open it. Instead, she looked out through the peephole. Chapter 678. Shi Mengwan's body was pressed against the door. Wan Xianyang was outside, and Jean Hauser was inside. She was a little confused. Her only thought was that she couldn't let the two of them meet. Turning around, she suddenly faced Jean Hauser's approaching body. It was rare for her to feel a little nervous. What do you want? After asking this question, Shi Mengwan realized how stupid her question was. She almost bit her tongue off. Jean Hauser, go to the bathroom and hide for a while. Jean Hauser narrowed his eyes and looked at her without moving at all. Jean Hauser. There was another knock on the door. Shi Mengwan's eyes were a little anxious. She started to reach out to push him. However, considering that he was injured, she didn't use too much strength. Jean Hauser suddenly grabbed her hand and pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her heavily on the lips. Shi Mengwan sucked in a breath of cold air, but he took advantage of this moment to barge in. He forcefully plundered her. It seemed like it had been a long time since he kissed her like this. Jean Hauser's heart was moved and he couldn't control himself. His kiss had always been irresistible to her. Before long, she was completely immersed in his kiss. She wrapped her hands around the back of his waist and slowly moved up. There were a few more knocks on the door, and Shi Mengwan came back to her senses from Zhang Hao's kiss. She pushed hard and Zhang Hao took 2 steps back. Shi Mengwan stood there and kept adjusting her breathing. Zhang Hao, if you plan to let others know that you're with me now, you can continue. Zhang Hao didn't continue. He looked deeply at Shi Mengwan, then nodded and turned to enter the bathroom. Shi Mengwan heaved a sigh of relief. She was really afraid that Zhang Hao would continue regardless. After all, not many people knew them in this foreign country. Taking a deep breath, she turned to open the door. Wan Xianyang, who was outside the door, smiled when he saw her. He handed a bouquet of flowers to her with a faint smile on his face. Congratulations. You? Shi Mengwan looked at the bouquet of flowers and wasn't in a hurry to take it. Wan Xianyang took a step forward and gestured for her to accept the flowers. But you passed the semi-finals and entered the finals. Isn't it worth being happy about? Thank you. Shi Mengwan took the flowers. Wan Xianyang looked at her face and his gaze fell on her body. Her clothes were a little messy, but he couldn't tell if he didn't look closely. His gaze shifted upwards and landed on the other party's lips. Wan Xianyang narrowed his eyes slightly. It was only for a moment before he quickly put on a smile. What? Aren't you going to invite me in? This was not convenient at all. Shi Mengwan looked at the bouquet of flowers in her hand, but she couldn't refuse. Please come in. You don't have to be so polite. Wan Xianyang entered the door and quickly scanned the room. He didn't see anyone. Finally, he glanced in the direction of the bathroom and sat down on the sofa in the room. That's right, you've passed the semifinals. Next should be the finals, right? I heard that you guys are going to complete your work in isolation? You even know this? Shi Mengwan was indeed a little surprised. I have a friend in the committee. So, one more question. Wan Xianyang looked at her with a cautious expression. You won't be angry, right? I won't. This competition was no secret. In order to ensure fairness, the officials had already announced the process. Are you guys going in the afternoon? Why don't I send you there? There's no need. Shi Mengwan refused without thinking. I brought my assistant over. She has arranged a car. We'll go together when the time comes. All right then. Wan Xianyang looked at her. How many days are you going? I'll pick you guys up and celebrate for you. Is that okay? We still don't know how the results are. It's too early to celebrate. In such a competition with so many experts, Shi Mengwan didn't dare to think that she could get into the top 3. She was already very happy to be able to enter the semi-finals. I have confidence in you. You'll definitely get a very good ranking. Wan Xianyang was much more confident in her. Maybe you can even get first place. Don't joke around. Shi Mengwan looked at the list of people who came to participate this time, especially those who made it into the top 10. She even paid attention today. Masters wouldn't come to such a competition, but there were many newcomers with good results. She was just a small studio. It was already her luck to be able to make it into the top 10. Don't think that way. In my heart, you're number 1. Wan Xianyang's words were equivalent to saying sweet nothings. Shi Mengwan didn't reply. Do you have anything else? Are you asking me to leave? No, I still have to pack my things. Xiao Ji and the others will come to find me later. Then you're still chasing me away. Wan Xianyang, all right, I'll leave, okay? Wan Xianyang stood up as he spoke. When he passed by Shi Mengwan, he stopped. If you need to pack your things, I won't disturb you anymore. However, I still hope that I can celebrate with you if I have the chance. Thank you. Wan Xianyang continued to walk out. When he passed by the bathroom door, he glanced there seemingly unintentionally. Shi Mengwan's heart instantly skipped a beat. She took a few steps and opened the door first. Wan Xianyang had already walked to the door. When he saw her actions, he smiled helplessly. You really can't wait to chase me away. I'm really hurt when you're like this. Shi Mengwan was stunned for a moment, but Wan Xianyang moved his body forward a little. In order to calm my hurt heart, why don't you give me a comforting kiss? Shi Mengwan was shocked by his actions, but Wan Xianyang suddenly smiled. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Come on. Compete well. I wish you a good ranking. Okay. Thank you. Shi Mingwan's expression wasn't as casual as before. Even though Wan Xianyang had expressed his intention to leave, her eyes were still a little guarded. That look made Wan Xianyang sigh in his heart. Sister-in-law's best friend was really not easy to get close to. However, when he stepped out of the room, he unintentionally glanced in the direction of the bathroom again. Why did he feel that the door seemed to have moved just now? However, before he could see clearly, Shi Mingwan had already quickly closed the door. After Wan Xianyang left, Shi Mingwan heaved a sigh of relief. However, just as she turned around, she saw Zhang Haoze coming out of the bathroom. With a cold face, he stood there expressionlessly and looked at her. Under his gaze, Shi Mingwan actually felt a sense of guilt. But it was only for a moment, and she quickly ignored it. Based on what? He could be engaged to another woman and be affectionate with her. She only had a suitor, and yet she felt guilty? She walked past Zhang Haoze and planned to continue packing her luggage, but her arm was grabbed by Zhang Haoze. Her body was turned around by him, and then she was pressed against the wall behind her. Zhang Haoze, she cried out. Zhang Haoze didn't give her a chance to speak again. He lowered his head to kiss her. It was a fierce and rough kiss. Shi Mingwan's lips were in pain from being crushed by him. She pushed him, but he didn't move at all. In a hurry, she placed her hand on his abdomen and wanted to attack his wound. But when she really touched that area, she put her hand down again. This pause undoubtedly gave Zhang Haoze another chance. He easily lifted her body and put her in a position where he was. Once again, he sealed her lips and nibbled on those two soft lips. Shi Mingwan was in pain and bit him instead. She used even more strength than Zhang Haoze. She bit down just like that, and she bit him so hard that his lips were bitten open just like that. The two of them tasted blood at the same time. The scene in front of them was so similar. Shi Mingwan thought of the last time she went on a blind date with Xiao Qi, and Zhang Haoze was also like this. She felt hatred in her heart and pushed him hard without caring about anything else. Zhang Haoze's abdomen was pushed by her. He snorted in pain and took a step back. Shi Mingwan used this opportunity to retreat from his arms and stand on the other side. Her chest was heaving violently, and her lips were still stained with blood. Her hair was a little messy, and the front of her clothes was mostly crooked. She looked like she was in a sorry state, but there was also a kind of beauty in her. Zhang Haoze narrowed his eyes and subconsciously took a step forward. Shi Mingwan took a step back. She looked at the person in front of her with a burning gaze. Zhang Haoze, you can't be like this every time. Her heart was beating a little fast. She bit her lip, and the expression on her face was a little reproachful and bitter at the same time. I'm your girlfriend, right? If not, what right do you have to treat me like this? If you're your girlfriend, what right do you have to treat me like this? She closed her eyes and forced herself not to admit defeat in front of Zhang Haoze. Zhang Haoze, can you respect me? Or is it that in your heart, I'm just that kind of casual woman that you can do whatever you want? Zhang Haoze was a little stunned by her righteous words, but Shi Mingwan didn't want to care about him anymore. Zhang Haoze, I'm going to the venue prepared by the organizing committee this afternoon for the competition. I won't be here for the next few days. Help yourself. She turned around to pack her luggage and stopped after taking 2 steps. Zhang Haoze, I don't think you like me that much, right? It's just a possessive desire. If it's not me, it can be other women. To you, there's no difference. To him, she was just an embellishment in his life. But to her, he was everything. Not treating her feelings seriously meant that she was at a disadvantage in this relationship. Her silhouette looked lonely from behind, which was rare for her to be like that. No matter when, she always gave people the feeling that she was optimistic and cheerful. Zhang Haoze stared at her back. Finally, when her hand touched the suitcase, he went forward and pulled her back into his arms. I didn't. Zhang Haoze looked at her and instinctively wanted to explain. In his heart, he had never seen her as a casual woman. Nothing? I'm not, Zhang Haoze said again. This time, he sounded even more serious than before. Shi Mingwan looked at him and inexplicably understood what he meant. He said that he wasn't being possessive. Are you trying to say that you like me? Shi Mengwan looked at him and returned to yesterday's question. Then do you think of me as your girlfriend? Zhang Haoze looked at her face and nodded gently. His expression was extremely serious. Shi Mengwan looked at him. Then, after we go back, can you make our relationship public? The problem was back to square one, but Shi Mengwan was especially concerned about this problem. If a man couldn't even let a woman stand by his side publicly and let everyone know that she was his girlfriend, what was the use of such a man? Zhang Haoze refused without thinking. There were still many dangers around him. This injury was just a warning. Shi Mengwan suddenly smiled as if she wasn't surprised by this answer at all. She pulled her hand out of Zhang Haoze's hand bit by bit. Zhang Haoze, you're really a bastard. Without looking at him, Shi Mengwan turned around and went to pack her luggage. There wasn't much to pack. They were outside anyway. In less than 20 minutes, she had packed everything. She pulled her suitcase and walked past Zhang Haoze to look for Xiao Ji and the others next door. Zhang Haoze took a step to the side, wanting to block Shi Mengwan's path. Shi Mengwan looked at him coldly. Zhang Haoze, this competition is very important. Please move aside. 1-1. Zhang Haoze didn't know what to say, but he couldn't let her know what had happened. Just now you don't have to explain. She looked at his conflicted expression and could roughly tell what he wanted to say. Unfortunately, she didn't want to hear it. The problem between us isn't about your actions just now. It's about your actions, your attitude towards me. I don't mean to look down on you, but now is really not the right time to make it public. Yes, it wasn't suitable, it just couldn't be. Then when was the right time? When could it be? Did he have an answer? I'm afraid not. She felt tired and didn't want to continue. Forget it. You'll never understand. She glanced at him. I'm going to the competition. Make yourself at home. Pulling her suitcase, Shi Mengwan left the room without looking back. This time, the organizing committee had really put in a lot of money. The venue for the finals was actually an ancient castle. The ancient castle was provided by the president of one of the sponsors this time. The first, second, and third designers also had the chance to work for this company. It had always been a world-class clothing brand. Such an opportunity was an excellent opportunity for all the participants. However, Shi Mengwan didn't have such plans. Her goal wasn't even to promote her studio. After all, if she wanted to talk about fame, she already had her own regular clients in Lin City. She came just to prove her ability. To prove that she could do it. The 10 points for the competition were arranged in the rooms on the first and second floors of the villa. For the next few days, except for special circumstances, all the participants were not allowed to leave. However, all the electronic equipment in the room was available. When Shi Mengwan entered the castle, she also received the theme of the finals, First Love. When she received this theme, Shi Mengwan felt Xiao Ji and Tong Yan looking at her worriedly. Sister Shi. Xiao Ji looked as if the sky had collapsed. You've never been in love before. Why did you choose such a theme? The sweet one from before was still a little better. Sweetness didn't just refer to love. Family, friendship, the little warmth of society. In this life, there would always be times when one would feel sweet, right? But this first love? Xiao Ji's face was inexplicably full of worry. Shi Mengwan glanced at Xiao Ji and gently knocked her on the head. All right, think about how you can help me. Let's go. The room Shi Mengwan was assigned was on the second floor. There was a large balcony here. There was a sofa and a coffee table on the balcony. From the balcony, one could see the beautiful scenery in the distance, as well as the well-tended garden downstairs. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but sigh. This sponsor had really put in a lot of money. She sat on the sofa and looked at the beautiful scenery outside. She wasn't in a hurry to draw. First love? Her first love was Zhang Haoze. But this first love, where did it begin? Or more than 10 years ago. She picked up the black tea prepared by the organizing committee on the table. Shi Mengwan's heart flew back to the year when she was 12 years old. She and Zhang Haoze depended on each other. When they met, it was when they were at their most miserable. She was actually a good girl. In the past, she, who had been strictly educated by Mother Sure, almost didn't dare to think that one day, she would have a relationship with a boy who was like a hooligan. But now, not only did it happen, but it also happened so unexpectedly. They were each other's comfort and support. She believed that if it weren't for Jean Hauser, she might have admitted defeat long ago and gone home. She also knew that if it weren't for her, her dear brother at that time definitely wouldn't have taken good care of himself. He would have fought everywhere, and then when he was injured, he would only casually treat his wounds. She once thought that if her dear brother was willing, she could stay with him like that for the rest of her life. But her dear brother didn't give her that chance. The heavens didn't give her that chance. After going around in circles, they could be considered to have met now. But some things were already the same, but the people had changed. Shi Mengwan thought of a certain scene and suddenly stood up. She walked to the table and took out a pen and paper. When Xiao Ji and Tong Yen settled down and came in, they saw Shi Mengwan, who had already devoted herself to her work. She lowered her head and drew very seriously. This room happened to face the west. The sunlight shone in from the huge balcony, dyeing Shi Mengwan's body with a layer of gold. Xiao Ji was shocked by such a scene. She couldn't help but take out her phone and quietly take a few photos of Shi Mengwan. After taking the photos, she logged into Shi Mengwan's Weibo. Song Seeking Studio didn't set up a Weibo. However, Shi Mengwan had one. Most of the time, she managed her Weibo by herself. Occasionally, when the company had activities, she would ask Xiao Ji to post some activities. The picture attached to, during the finals, was the photo that Xiao Ji had just posted. She even made a 9-grid grid. After posting the photo, she glanced at Tong Yen. Tong Yen also had some ideas at this moment. He went into the room and found a place to sit down. Then he took out his tools. Xiao Ji looked at the two of them and turned around to be in charge of logistics. Time passed very quickly. In the blink of an eye, 7 days had passed. The main color Shi Mengwan used this time was green, a faint green. What was first love? It was youth, it was budding, that moment of heartbeat. It was like a tender bud that had just grown in spring, just emerging. She still remembered how she felt back then. When she left her dear brother, she felt uncomfortable, conflicted, and painful. However, there was more joy, beauty, and a smile on her face when she recalled the past. This was what Shi Mengwan thought. She designed a total of 3 pieces of clothing. This was also the requirement of the competition. Every designer decided to submit at least 2 pieces of work. Shi Mengwan, on the other hand, drew 3 pieces in one go. The main piece was a dress. She used Ogin yarn as the main fabric. It was a little hard. Because they didn't understand love, the feelings of young men and women were a little stiff. However, there were also some lighter green leaves dotted among them. First love was beautiful, but there were too many things that could distract a person. First love couldn't be the only one. If the two of them wanted to be together, there were too many misgivings. If they broke up, there would be too many external reasons. Shi Mengwan was very satisfied with this set of works. She poured all of her feelings into it. After the finished product was made, Shi Mengwan submitted the work and the design drawings together. The rest was out of her control. All those who had submitted their works could play around the castle for the rest of the time. She told herself to relax and played seriously with Tong Yen and Xiao Ji in the castle for a day. Finally, it was time to announce the results. The 10 people who participated in the finals were all experts. Shi Mengwan saw the other 9 works on the day of the announcement. She had to admit that the standards of the competition were indeed amazing. When the final rankings were announced, a pink dress designed by a local French designer won first place. The second place was an Italian designer, and the third place was a designer from Hong Kong. The colors used by the other party were quite bold. The design theme was like first love, brave and fearless. When Shi Mengwan saw those works, she knew that she probably wouldn't be in the top 3. After all, she had something on her mind and had too many worries. But to her surprise, she actually won the most special design award. She was 4th place. Shi Mengwan was satisfied. After the award ceremony, the other designers came to congratulate her. That night, The organizers and the organizing committee held a celebration dinner in the castle. All the designers who came to participate had to wear the themed clothes they had designed. Shi Mengwan put on the green dress. She looked like an elf in the forest. When she entered the banquet hall, she attracted a lot of attention. At this banquet, there were many local fashion brands from Paris. There were clothes, bags, jewelry, and perfume. It was Shi Mengwan's first time seeing so many legendary figures. She was fine. No matter what, she had been to the Su family and Hua Jinyao's company a few times. It was the first time Xiao Ji and Tong Yen had been to such a place. The two girls didn't know where to put their hands and feet. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but laugh. Just as she was about to comfort them, the person in charge of the sponsor, Dixon, waved at her from the other side and asked her to go over. Shi Mengwan had no choice but to ask Xiao Ji and Tong Yen to find a place to stay and not run around. She went in Dixon's direction. Sure. Shi Mengwan didn't come over with an English name. They all called her by her surname. Dixon looked at Shi Mengwan with a faint smile on his face. Chapter 679. Was he also from China? Shi Mengwan was a little interested. Up until now, she was the only one from the mainland who had participated in the competition. She had chatted with the third-place Hong Kong beauty for a long time, and the other party kept asking her to go to Hong Kong to play. She was already very happy to be able to meet a Chinese person, but there was actually a Chinese person now? Was it also a manufacturer from China? Or, as he spoke, Dixon took half a step to the side and looked behind him. Jean, let me introduce you. This is Miss Shi, also from Lin City. Her work this time is very good. It's very spiritual. Sure, this is Jean. He's also from Lin City, China. In your words, he's a fellow villager. Dixon smiled brightly, but Shi Mengwan's expression instantly stiffened. Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hauser, who suddenly appeared in front of her. For a moment, she thought there was something wrong with her eyes. Why was he here? Seeing that she didn't say anything, Dixon thought that she didn't know Jean Hauser's identity, so he explained further. Sure, although Jean is from China, he also has his own business in France, including some fashion brands. Dixon said two names, and Shi Mengwan looked at Jean Hauser in surprise. He was wearing a white suit with a dark red pattern stitched from the collar to the shoulders. The clothes-fitting tailoring and such a design made him look a little more noble. She could even feel Jean Hauser's gaze landing on him when he stood up. However, she wasn't just paying attention to Jean Hauser's current appearance. Her mind was filled with the two names that Dixon had mentioned. They were two new fashion brands. Although the design was considered niche, it was already quite well known in the country and in Europe and the United States. Were these two clothing brands Jean Hauser's business? She lowered her eyes and thought of something from a long time ago. It was not long after she went to school. It was the day after she found out that her dear brother would still fight with others outside and get injured. She suddenly had an inspiration and drew a design that was still considered immature at that time. At that time, she took the design and ran to show it to Qiao Zhe. The young man looked at her with gentleness in his eyes. Dear brother, what do you think of this dress? Not bad. It's very beautiful. The youth wasn't stingy with his compliments. If Wanwan wore it, it would be even more beautiful. Really? Big brother, you're not lying to me, right? Nope. I'm serious. As the young man spoke, he pulled her to his side and sat her down. His gaze fell on the painting in the young lady's hand, but he put his arm around her shoulder and pulled her closer to him. He liked her being close to him, and he liked being close to her. Shi Mengwan took the opportunity to lean on his shoulder and also look at the design drawing. Finally, she turned to look at the young man. Big brother. Can you help me in the future? Help you? Yeah, I'll draw and design clothes and you'll make clothes. You'll open a big factory and sell the clothes I design to more people. The young man looked into her eyes. He didn't think that it would be a difficult goal for them to achieve now. Instead, he nodded lightly and said, all right. What Shi Mengwan didn't say was that at that time, dear brother would have something to do and wouldn't fight outside anymore. She knew that even though he was very good at fighting and rarely got hurt, he was still very good at fighting. However, she was still very worried about him and didn't want him to be like that in the future. Big brother. In the future, I will definitely draw a lot of beautiful pictures. At that time, there will definitely be a lot of people who will buy the clothes I design. At that time, you must help me, okay? Okay. Dear brother. Yes. In the future, when we earn money, we can move to a big house, and we can travel around the world. We don't have to stay here anymore. At that time, can you stop fighting with others? Okay. The young man pressed her body into his arms. He used a little too much strength. He smelled the young lady's scent on her body, and his eyes were firm. Dear brother. Every time you go out, I'm very worried about you. I don't like you fighting with others. Next time, you really don't fight with others, okay? Okay. Dear brother. You're so nice. The young lady smiled happily. The young man looked at the self-destruction on her face and forced himself to calm down. Then, he looked at her and said very firmly, I don't fight with others. When you grow up and become a fashion designer, I'll open a clothing company. I'll specialize in selling clothes designed by you. Okay. Then I'll wait for you. The young lady smiled brightly. At that moment, the dilapidated bungalow seemed to have welcomed a sky full of stars. Dixon's voice brought her back to her senses. Sorry, I was a little distracted. Shi Mengwan looked at that handsome face and forced herself to look away. Did Jean Hauser create those two clothing brands for her? Could she think like that? But looking at him, she couldn't link these two things together at all. Dixon acted as if he didn't notice the loss of composure on her face and continued to talk about Jean Hauser's identity in high spirits. These are all brands under Jean's banner. You're all from China. I think you two should have something to talk about. After Dixon finished speaking, someone happened to be looking for her. She excused herself to the two of them and left first. Only Jean Hauser and Shi Mengwan were left standing there. Shi Mengwan stood still. She thought about what Dixon said just now. Jean Hauser actually had a business in France? Didn't he run a technology company? What had he been doing outside all these years? What had he experienced? She couldn't help but feel a trace of curiosity. However, she forced herself to look away and not at Jean Hauser. Congratulations. Jean Hauser stood beside her. A waiter happened to pass by. He picked up 2 glasses of champagne from the tray and placed one of them in Shi Mengwan's hand. Shi Mengwan looked at him for a while and finally reached out to take it. There's nothing to congratulate. She didn't enter the top 3 again. Jean Hauser's gaze fell on her. The extremely fresh green color contrasted with her snow-white skin. The top was a one-shoulder design that was tailored to fit her body. A leaf just extended to her shoulder, and the bottom was layered with light muslin. Jean Hauser gently clinked his glass with hers. In my heart, you're number 1. Shi Mengwan was stunned by his words. Her hand that was holding the glass stopped there and she just looked at him. Realizing that she was affected by him again, Shi Mengwan turned her face away. She didn't let herself sink any further. She casually took a sip of champagne. Standing next to Jean Hauser made her feel uncomfortable. She put the glass aside and turned around to leave. However, Jean Hauser put down the glass and held her hand. Shi Mengwan looked at that hand and then at the other people in the banquet hall. She lowered her voice and was a little anxious. Let go. The music in the hall changed at this moment. Jean Hauser looked at Shi Mengwan and reached out his hand to her. Shi Mengwan understood what he meant and took a step back. Let's go. Dance with me. As Jean Hauser spoke, he held her hand and led her to the dance floor in the middle of the hall. Shi Mengwan wanted to retreat, but his hand had already wrapped around her waist. He led her around the edge of the dance floor. Bit by bit, they slid into the middle of the dance floor. Being led by him like this, even if Shi Mengwan didn't want to, she could only dance and spin with his steps. After dancing a few steps, she realized that Jean Hauser's dancing skills were pretty good. She was a little surprised. Her dancing skills weren't considered good. After all, she wasn't a rich young lady. There weren't many opportunities for her to attend banquets. Now that Jean Hauser was leading her, she looked at Jean Hauser in front of her. There were more and more secrets about him that she couldn't figure out and couldn't see through. However, not only could she not let go of these secrets, but she also wanted to get closer and know more. Shi Mingwan's footsteps turned in a circle. This kind of thinking was very dangerous. She had to suppress it. Jean Hauser was very dangerous. She had to stay away. Her rationality kept reminding her, but when she looked at Jean Hauser's deep eyes, she could only dance with his footsteps. "You're very beautiful today." Jean Hauser moved his face closer to Shi Mingwan's ear. He spoke in a soft voice, and the hot air he blew out was right next to her ear. Her ears turned red and she subconsciously shrank her neck. She wanted to avoid him, but she and Jean Hauser were already dancing. Where could she hide? Jean Hauser's hand around her waist slightly tightened, and she moved closer to him instead. Shi Mingwan had already made up her mind to stay away from him. His actions made her want to escape from his arms. Have you ever thought about cooperating with these big European and American brands? Promote your designs all over the world. The sudden voice above her head stunned Shi Mingwan. She looked up at him with a hint of shock in her eyes. "Jean Hauser, have you never thought about it?" Jean Hauser looked at her and said indifferently, "If you want, whether it's Dixon or any other company, you can think about it." The information revealed by these words was too much. Shi Mingwan furrowed her brows. She looked up at Jean Hauser's face as if it was the first time she had met him. "Jean Hauser, who exactly are you?" Dear brother was 15 when he met her, and he was 16 when they separated. The two of them had been separated for 12 years. What exactly had Jean Hauser done in the past 12 years? What had he experienced? Was he really her dear brother? With his situation back then, it was really a little scary for him to have achieved what he had today in 12 years. Putting aside the two clothing brands that Dixon had mentioned just now, it was definitely not easy to be able to reach such a level abroad. After she met Xiaoqi, she specially went to investigate the technology company that she had mentioned. She also investigated Jean Hauser. Although their company's website didn't have a photo of Jean Hauser, the introduction on it was very clear. The technology company that Xiaoqi was talking about was founded by Jean Hauser. Now, its market value was countless times higher than when it was founded. With such ability and such methods, she thought of the young man who only knew how to fight back then. She really couldn't connect the person in front of her with that young man. Jean Hauser looked into her eyes and tilted his head slightly. A kiss fell on her lips just like that. His voice was very soft. "I'm your man." Shi Mingwan's face suddenly turned red. She wanted to push Jean Hauser away, but she realized that he had brought her to the edge of the dance floor. The music changed at this moment. Jean Hauser took the opportunity to let go of her hand and brought her to the corner of the hall. As one of the invited guests, Jean Hauser also had a room in the castle. He brought Shi Mingwan upstairs. Shi Mingwan tried to break free from his hand a few times, but she didn't get what she wanted. When she went up to the second floor, she was surprised to find that Jean Hauser's room was actually arranged next to hers. Her body was brought in by him, and her hand grabbed the door handle. "Jean Hauser, don't do anything rash." There were still so many guests downstairs, and Dixon was also there. Compared to the rudeness and fierceness he had when he was entangled with her on the bed just now, the way he called her name was extremely gentle. Shi Mingwan had the urge to cry, but she didn't want him to see her like this. She pushed him and got up to leave. However, she forgot that her body was still weak from the strenuous exercise. Just as she wanted to sit up, she fell back again. This time, she happened to fall into his arms. He just wanted to stop her, so her chin hit the top of his head. Shi Mingwan was in pain. The tears that she had been holding back just now fell uncontrollably. Her tears stimulated Jean Hauser. He got up and wrapped her in his arms. "Wanwan." Shi Mingwan rarely felt so vulnerable. Now, she suddenly wanted to cry and felt uncomfortable. The emotions that she had been suppressing since her reunion with Jean Hauser seemed to finally be able to be vented. She raised her hand and suddenly punched Jean Hauser's chest. "Bastard, you bastard." As she spoke, She punched him a few more times. Her strength was nothing more than scratching an itch to him. Zhang Haoze didn't stop her and let her punch him. Shi Mengwan punched him many times until her hands were out of strength. She finally stopped and leaned her face against Zhang Haoze. Her voice was very soft. Zhang Haoze, you're a bastard. He only knew how to bully her. He had always been like this. Zhang Haoze, you're a liar. He had clearly promised her something, but he couldn't do anything. If he wasn't a liar, then what was he? Zhang Haoze, you're still a thief. He stole her heart, but he didn't want to take responsibility. He was really a thief. You bastard, you liar, you thief. Shi Mengwan wouldn't scold him anymore. She only said these 3 words back and forth. In the end, she was tired of fighting and scolding. In addition, she had been mentally and physically exhausted for the finals these few days. By the time Zhang Haoze realized it, she had already closed her eyes and fell asleep on his chest. Even though she was asleep, her lips still seemed to be moving. He got closer and listened carefully. He heard the word, bastard. Zhang Haoze gently picked her up and laid her flat on the bed. He looked at her and gently caressed her cheek. There were still traces of tears there. He wiped away those tears one by one. Finally, he planted a kiss on her forehead. He wanted to lie down with her. Ever since Shi Mengwan left that day, he hadn't been idle for the past few days. He had a lot of things to do, but now he just wanted to hug this woman and sleep for a while. However, as soon as he lay down, his phone rang. Before waking Shi Mengwan up, Zhang Haoze quickly turned off the sound of his phone. Then he got up and went to the bathroom to answer the phone. The news from the other side made his expression solemn. He seemed to have thought of something and spoke extremely calmly. I'll be right back. Prepare the plane. Walking out of the bathroom, Shi Mengwan was sleeping soundly. Zhang Haoze put on his clothes and stared at her sleeping face by the bed for a long time. Finally, he turned around and left resolutely. After Shi Mengwan returned from France, the workload of the studio increased a lot. Although she didn't get the top 3, the most special design award and the 4th place in the competition were still very good. Especially the Weibo post that Xiao Ji posted on her phone that day. She was called the most beautiful female designer. Now, in addition to the high order, many clothing companies came to ask her if she was interested in mass production. Shi Mengwan was too busy, so she rejected them for the time being. Most importantly, she remembered what Zhang Haoze said that day. Speaking of Zhang Haoze, it wasn't strange that she didn't see Zhang Haoze when she woke up the next day. He seemed to have always been like this. He came and went as he pleased. What was she to him? Did they break up like this? She didn't go back to her room for the whole night, and her phone was left with Xiao Ji. The next day, Xiao Ji and Tong Yan were looking for her like crazy. Shi Mengwan could only say that she was drunk yesterday and found a room to sleep. If it weren't for the fact that this was Dixon's castle, Xiao Ji and Tong Yan wouldn't have believed her so easily. After returning to Lin City, Shi Mengwan had been paying attention to the news of the Chen family in Lin City. She found that other than the news of the engagement last time, there was no other news. Shi Mengwan couldn't tell what she felt. She really wanted to look for Zhang Haoze, but she also wanted to use this opportunity to break it off. Soon, she wasn't in the mood to worry about Zhang Haoze. When Su Qingsang went to be an exchange doctor, there was an earthquake. Then, Su Qingsang lost contact. Shi Mengwan couldn't sit still anymore. She went to the Su family to look for Li Qianxue. It was only after she went to Rong City that she found out that Su Qingsang wasn't Xiang Caiping's daughter, but Li Qianxue's daughter. She really couldn't have imagined such a thing. Now that Su Qingsang was in trouble, she definitely couldn't go to the disaster area, but the Su family would have a way, right? Li Qianxue was also worried, but she received a call from Hua Jinyao. Hua Jinyao comforted her and said that he had already brought supplies to the disaster area and told her not to worry. No matter how anxious she was now, she knew that with her physical and mental state, going to the disaster area would only cause more trouble. No matter how worried she was, she could only trust Hua Jinyao now. Shi Mengwan couldn't be as calm as Li Qianxue. She and Su Qingsang had known each other for so many years. To her, Su Qingsang was like a sister. She also wanted to go to the disaster area to look for Su Qingsang. However, not everyone could go to the disaster area now. If Hu Jinyao hadn't donated a large amount of supplies and followed them to the disaster area, it wouldn't have been so easy for him. She thought about it, but she didn't know how to go to the disaster area and participate in the search for Su Qingsang. Finally, she thought of Zhang Haoze. She took out her phone and called Zhang Haoze, but no one answered. After staring at the phone for a long time, she decided to make a trip herself. The car stopped downstairs of the technology company where Zhang Haoze was. Shi Mengwan wasn't sure if she could find him if she went upstairs. Maybe he wasn't in the company? She wanted to leave, but her worry for Su Qingsang overwhelmed everything else. After entering the building, she was in no mood to appreciate the ultra-modern decoration and some equipment that could only be seen in movies. She walked directly to the front desk and told the front desk that she was looking for Zhang Haoze. "You're looking for President Zhang? I'm sorry. If you don't have an appointment, we can't let you go up." "Can you ask?" "I'm sorry, madam. I really can't see President Zhang without an appointment." Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth and was still thinking about how to go up and see Zhang Haoze. She heard someone calling her. Chapter 680. Mengwan. Xiao Qi's voice made her turn around. She was relieved to see an acquaintance, but at the same time, she felt a little uncomfortable. "Why are you here? Are you here for me?" Xiao Qi had been sent to the branch office by Zhang Haoze. Today, he happened to be here to report, but he didn't expect to see Shi Mengwan. "No." Shi Mengwan stood there, a little hesitant. She didn't know if she should tell Xiao Qi. "Then what are you doing?" "I'm looking for Zhang Haoze." Shi Mengwan looked at him. Her voice was a little obscure and a little shy. "But they said that I can't go up without an appointment." "You're looking for President Zhang?" Xiao Qi was stunned. He didn't seem to understand what kind of relationship Shi Mengwan had with Zhang Haoze. "I have something to talk to him about." Shi Mengwan looked at Xiao Qi. She knew that she shouldn't, but she still said, "Do you have a way for me to see him?" "Come with me." He was doing well in the new company, so he still had some face in front of Zhang Haoze. "Thank you." Shi Mengwan nodded. Xiao Qi didn't ask further and led her to the elevator. With Shorky leading the way, this one went very smoothly. When she went upstairs, Tang Hua happened to be there too. He was stunned when he saw Shi Mengwan. He glanced at Xiao Qi with obvious disapproval in his eyes. Xiao Qi was a little embarrassed. In fact, he didn't know what the relationship between Shi Mengwan and Zhang Haoze was. "She has something to talk to President Zhang about." "Assistant Tang, can you help inform him?" He knew that Zhang Haoze had just finished a meeting and should be in his office. Tang Hua looked at him and turned to Shi Mengwan. He naturally knew Shi Mengwan. "Wait a moment." Tang Hua entered the door. Xiao Qi looked at Shi Mengwan and wanted to ask several times. "Shan, thank you." Shi Mengwan looked at him and remembered that she still owed him an explanation. "If there's a chance next time, I'll tell you." "It doesn't matter." Xiao Qi waved his hand. "It doesn't matter if you don't want to tell me. I believe in you." Shi Mengwan didn't say anything, but there was a rare hint of emotion in her eyes. Her relationship with Zhang Haoze had almost become her own bitter journey. She couldn't tell her family, she couldn't tell her friends, and she couldn't even let others know. Although she was separated from Zhang Haoze, not only did she not get any relief, but she also felt more and more uncomfortable. Zhang Haoze was like a poison to her. She couldn't get rid of it. If he wanted to quit, he would feel the pain of being skinned and having his bones pulled out. A minute later, Tang Hua came out and glanced at Shi Mengwan. "President Zhang asked you to go in." Shi Mengwan's heart was in her throat. She stood there and wanted to retreat for a moment. Xiao Qi didn't seem to notice that something was wrong with her. Then, "Ning, I still have something to do. You can do as you please." "Okay, thank you." Shi Mengwan thanked him sincerely. After Xiao Qi left, Tang Hua opened the door for Shi Mengwan. Shi Mengwan stood there, closed her eyes and walked in. It was her first time in Zhang Haoze's office. The cold air brushed against her face, calming her nerves a little. Zhang Haoze's office was very large. The high space was still full of technological design. Shi Mengwan took a few steps and stood in the middle of the office. She didn't continue to go inside. Zhang Haoze was dealing with documents. It could be seen that he seemed to be very busy. There was a lot of information by his hand. Other than a laptop on the table, there was also a desktop computer. Both of them were turned on. The screen of the desktop computer was half facing the door. She could see the red and green lines on it. Zhang Haoze held a pen in his hand. He signed the document in front of him and put it aside. He didn't even raise his head. "Come here." Shi Mengwan paused for a moment. Her footsteps were a little heavy. Zhang Haoze took another document. He raised his head and looked at her. "Come here." Shi Mengwan gritted her teeth. She had the urge to turn around and leave. However, when she thought of the purpose of her visit today, she still lifted her feet and walked over step by step. When he walked behind the desk, Zhang Haoze seemed to be dissatisfied with her spending so much time. He stretched out his hand and pulled her onto his lap. Zhang Haoze, In front of her was Zhang Haoze's enlarged face. His dense kisses were like a net, trapping her in it. There was nowhere to escape. After the kiss ended, Shi Mengwan's hands and feet went limp. Her entire body leaned weakly against his chest. Realizing her purpose for coming here, she pushed against his chest and tried to stand up. Zhang Haoze held her hand, grabbed her waist, and turned her body to face him. "Zhang Haoze." Shi Mengwan pressed her hands against his chest, and her breathing was a little rapid. "I came to look for you for something." As Zhang Haoze spoke, he held her hand in his. His calloused hand played with her fingertips one by one. It was clearly her hand, but Shi Mengwan felt like she was being played with. She wanted to pull her hand out, but he held her finger and put it into his mouth. "What is it?" Her finger was half bitten by him. Shi Mengwan wanted to retract it, but his grip was very tight. She became more and more uncomfortable, and her voice was a little intonated. "There was an earthquake in S province. I want to go to the disaster area. But now they won't let me go." Zhang Haoze stopped biting her finger for a moment. He looked into her eyes. "Why are you going there? Qing Sang is there. There's still no news of her. I'm very worried about her." Her finger was bitten hard by him. She felt the pain and quickly pulled her hand back. Zhang Haoze looked at her with a deep gaze. His meaning was unclear. Shi Mengwan didn't know what was wrong with him, but she wouldn't forget her purpose. "I heard that you can go in with the supplies. I want to know if you can." "No." Zhang Haoze directly refused. "Zhang Haoze? I can donate supplies, but I won't let you go to S province. There are still aftershocks there. It's very dangerous." It was rare for Zhang Haoze to say a string of words in one breath. His voice sounded very calm, but the concern in his words was not less. Shi Mengwan refused to give in just like that. "It's precisely because it's very dangerous that I want to go. Do you know that Qing Sang is my best friend? Hua Jinyao will naturally take care of her matters. You don't have to worry too much. Hua Jinyao won't let anything happen to her." He had seen Hua Jinyao and Su Qing Sang together. Hua Jinyao doted on his wife very much. He believed that he wouldn't let anything happen to Su Qing Sang. How can it be the same? Hua Jinyao was Hua Jinyao and she was her. I can't tell what's the difference. As Zhang Haoze spoke, he grabbed Shi Mengwan's hand and gently bit it again. Shi Mengwan was in pain, but this time, she couldn't even pull it back. "Zhang Haoze, I must go." "I also said, you're not allowed to go." "You!" Shi Mengwan pushed him hard. At the same time, she pulled her hand out and took a big step back. Her movements were too big, and the back of her waist accidentally hit his desk. This was much more painful than being bitten on her finger. Her facial features were squeezed together. Zhang Haoze quickly got up and wanted to check her waist. "Where did you hit?" "Don't touch me." Shi Mengwan's temper flared up. She had already decided to break up with Zhang Haoze. She came because she really didn't have anyone else to look for. However, with Zhang Haoze's attitude, she knew that she couldn't count on him. She would think of another way. She ignored the pain on the back of her waist and turned to leave. Zhang Haoze pulled her body over and fixed her in his arms again. He lifted her clothes and was about to check her injury. Let go of me. She didn't need his concern. Jean Hauser was a little angry because of her uncooperative actions. She was clearly injured, but she was still so stubborn. He pressed her body down and took a step back. She sat on his lap again. This was much more convenient. He lifted her clothes and found that the back of her waist had already been bruised. Her skin was fair, and such a large bruise looked especially glaring. Jean Hauser's expression didn't look too good. He pressed the internal line and asked Tang Hua to send the medicine in. No need. He hung up the phone. Shi Mengwan didn't want to accept this favor. It's just a small injury. She still had to think of a way to go to S province to find Su Qingseng. She struggled to remember. Such an uncooperative action made Jean Hauser narrow his eyes. Looking at Shi Mengwan, who was so disobedient, he raised his hand and patted her crotch twice. Shi Mengwan's eyes widened. She couldn't believe that he actually hit her. You, be obedient. As Jean Hauser spoke, he patted her again. Shi Mengwan's face was red. Half of it was anger, and the other half was embarrassment. No matter what, she was loved by her parents as she grew up. Other than that rebellious year when she ran away from home, she had always been a good girl. Her parents hadn't even touched a single finger of hers. Who knew that Jean Hauser, this bastard, would actually hit her? But Jean Hauser, let go of me. She wanted to get up again, but Jean Hauser didn't let her. Tang Hua was very fast. In less than 2 minutes, he brought the medicine in. When he entered the door, he saw Shi Mengwan sitting on Jean Hauser's lap. Tang Hua's expression was strange for a moment, but it was only for a moment. He quickly returned to normal. He put down the medicine, turned around, and left. Before he left, he even considerately helped Jean Hauser lock the door. The sound of the door locking made Shi Mengwan inexplicably nervous. She remembered that Jean Hauser had already lifted her clothes again. He picked up the ointment at the side, opened it, picked out a little, and helped her apply it to her waist. His movements were considered gentle, but Shi Mengwan felt itchy, and her body unconsciously twisted. Don't move. Jean Hauser held her waist in place and held her waist with his big hand, not letting her move. Shi Mengwan forced herself not to move and let him apply the ointment for her. However, as he applied it, the movements of his hand changed. It was no longer lingering on her waist, but slowly moving down and down. It had already reached the edge of her dress. She was wearing a 2-piece dress suit today, which definitely made it easier for him to move. Seeing that his fingers were about to reach inside her dress, Shi Mengwan grabbed his hand and turned to look at him. She resisted the urge to run away immediately. She stared at his face and said word by word, I want to go to S province. Jean Hauser's hand stopped there. Her skin was smooth and delicate, making him feel a little reluctant to part with it. I want to go to S province. She said it again, her voice even louder than before. Jean Hauser looked at the determination on her face, leaned over, and gently bit her lips. She was in pain, but she didn't move away. Instead, she placed her hands on the front of his clothes and said word by word, Jean Hauser, did you hear me? I said I want to go to S province. Jean Hauser slowly retracted his hand and slowly moved it up. Finally, it landed at the butterfly bone behind her. If I let you go, how are you going to thank me? The hint in his eyes was too obvious. Shi Mengwan had been with him for more than half a year, so how could she not understand what he meant? She gritted her teeth. How do you want me to thank you? Jean Hauser reached out to lift her chin and looked her in the eye. Don't break up. Shi Mengwan's face turned pale. She looked at him with a complicated expression. Impossible. Then there's nothing to talk about. Jean Hauser let go of her hand. I still have a lot of work to deal with. Jean Hauser. Shi Mengwan didn't leave his lap. She was really worried about Su Qingseng. Other than this, anything else is fine. He clearly had a fiancée, and he clearly didn't lack women. Why did he have to treat her like this? I don't want anything else, just this. Jean Hauser's words made Shi Mengwan even more discouraged. She looked at him and really didn't understand what he was thinking. Jean Hauser, what kind of woman do you want? Why do you have to keep staring at me? Jean Hauser stared at her face, gently retracted his hand behind her, and pressed his forehead against hers. I just want you. His low voice carried a hint of heat, and Shi Mengwan trembled. But, you have a fiancé. Shi Mengwan forced herself to be rational and not be swayed by a few words from him. I don't. Jean Hauser kissed the tip of her nose gently. I only have you. Such a Jean Hauser was simply poison to her. Shi Mengwan trembled. She watched as Jean Hauser's face magnified in front of her. His lips moved from her forehead, to her eyelids, to her cheeks, and then to the tip of her nose. Finally, he kissed her lips again. She couldn't resist, and there was nowhere to escape. Unknowingly, the kiss on the road to philanthropy had changed. His kiss was urgent, forceful, and full of predatory aura. She had nowhere to run. Her body was carried by Jean Hauser. The moment she was suspended in the air, she was afraid of falling, so she instinctively wrapped her arms around his neck. She felt him carry her into a door on the side. When she entered the door, she realized that it was a lounge. The room was pure white. The room wasn't big, but it had everything. There was a bed, a small table, a wardrobe, and a bathroom inside. Her body was placed on the bed inside by Jean Hauser. As he approached, she pressed her hands against his chest. I want to go to S province. She said it again. At this time, she still refused to give up. Jean Hauser's response to her was to kiss her lips again, not giving her a chance to speak again. The bed under her was clearly used for a short rest. But it was unexpectedly soft. Shi Mengwan had a feeling as if she was stepping on clouds. She always felt that she was rising higher and floating further and further with his movements. That kind of floating and unreal feeling made her heart hang in her throat. She was a little afraid that she would fall. That feeling of fear made her cling tightly to him, unwilling to let go. Her actions made his eyes darken. He grabbed her waist and increased the strength of his plundering. She wanted to retreat, but he pulled her forward. There was no other way but to welcome everything he gave her. In the end, she fell into a deep sleep in extreme happiness. Although Shi Mengwan was very tired, she didn't sleep for long because she had something on her mind. She opened her eyes and realized where she was. She got up and quickly put on her clothes. Looking at the messy room, her face was a little red. This feeling was as if she had delivered it to his door. She went into the bathroom to wash her face. Looking at herself in the mirror, there was nothing wrong with her at all. After that, she was about to go out. Just as her hand touched the door handle, she heard a female voice coming from outside. Brother Hao. That title stunned her, and she froze on the spot. Chen Feifei? Brother Hao. Chen Feifei had a hard time catching Jean Hauser today. Why didn't you go to the Chen Corporation today? I've been waiting for you there for a long time. Jean Hauser's gaze fell on the documents in front of him. He signed several documents in a row, but he didn't look at her. Chen Feifei was a little annoyed. She stepped forward and blocked the documents with her hand. Brother Hao, can't you put aside your work first? Didn't you see that I came to look for you today? In order to see her, she specially wore a new set of clothes and even went to do her hair. She had made so many changes that she thought he would see it. But he didn't see her at all. Jean Hauser finally raised his head and looked at her. I can't go there today. I told Uncle. In fact, the Qin Corporation's business had long stabilized. Other than some particularly important cooperation and some planning meetings, he participated in the daily work. Whether or not he was there in the daily work didn't affect the results. But I want to see you. Chen Feifei's voice became more and more aggrieved. You've seen me now. Jean Hauser's voice didn't have much impatience, but if one listened carefully, they could hear the coldness in his voice. Chen Feifei bit her lip. She stood there, looking extremely aggrieved. Brother Hao, what did I do wrong? Chen Feifei bit her lip and looked pitiful. Why are you treating me like this? She leaned forward and forced him to look at her. Look at you, you've been ignoring me. Chen Feifei was really aggrieved. I've been here for so long, but you only have work in your eyes. Can't you put down your work and accompany me? She had known Jean Hauser for so many years. For so many years, she only had eyes for him. She treated him as her future husband. Everything was centered around him, and she was happy with his happiness. But after doing so much, Jean Hauser always treated her like a brother treating his sister. He was taking care of her, but he wasn't gentle. He was good to her, but he wasn't considerate. He still didn't know what she liked or didn't like, and he still didn't know what he wanted. No, or perhaps he knew, but he deliberately pretended not to know. Ever since she had confirmed her feelings, no matter how many men had expressed their goodwill over the years, she had turned a blind eye to all of them. She only had him in her eyes, and she hoped that he only had her in his eyes. But Jean Hauser didn't have her in his eyes at all. "I'm busy with work." Jean Hauser's voice was very soft. "If you feel bored, you can ask Xiaoli to go shopping with you. You can travel outside and play. Anyway, you have a lot of time." Chen Feifei stood there as if she had suddenly reacted. "Brother Hao, do you dislike me? Do you? You dislike me for not working, and you dislike me for idling around, don't you?" Chen Feifei was actually also a highly educated person. She used to study at the most famous A university in Lin City. Back then, in order to catch up with Jean Hauser and be worthy of him, who was a top student, she had put in a lot of effort. However, her health wasn't good. After graduation, Qin Yongchang didn't let her find a job, so she stayed at home. Now that she looked at Jean Hauser, she suddenly realized that the gap between her and Jean Hauser might be getting bigger and bigger. He might really not like herself like this. "Brother Hao, I'll go to work at the company too. I'll work hard too. What do you think?" Jean Hauser didn't answer. With Chen Feifei's personality, how could she stand the 9-to-5 life of an office worker? "Feifei, stop fooling around. Go home." "How am I fooling around? No matter what, I graduated from a university." Chen Feifei was angered by Jean Hauser's attitude. "Why can't I enter the company? Brother Hao, do you not believe me at all? You don't believe that I can do it well, right?" Jean Hauser didn't answer her question, but his attitude was tacit agreement. "Brother Hao, you really don't love me. In your heart, do you think that I'm not worthy of you at all? Do you think that I'm useless? Do you think that I'm just a social bug?" "I didn't say that." Jean Hauser wanted to take her hand away and continue reading the documents. Chen Feifei was hurt by Jean Hauser's nonchalant attitude. She felt despair. After so many years, why didn't Jean Hauser have her in his eyes? Logically speaking, they were childhood sweethearts and had been living together since they were in their teens. This kind of relationship was naturally not something that those women outside could compare to. But he was so cold to her. She couldn't stand it anymore. She looked at Jean Hauser's face. He was undoubtedly handsome. More importantly, there was an enchanting aura on his body that made her unable to stop even if she wanted to. She looked at him for a long time. Suddenly, as if she had made up her mind, she walked around the desk and sat on Jean Hauser's lap. "Brother Hao, why can't you see me? I just like you. Can't that be okay? Can't I like you?" As Chen Feifei spoke, she put her arms around Jean Hauser's shoulders. She leaned over and was about to kiss him. Jean Hauser avoided it. He pushed Chen Feifei's body away and looked in the direction of the lounge. Chen Feifei didn't notice his gaze. She wanted to kiss him again, but Jean Hauser pushed her away again. "Feifei, stop fooling around." Fooling around? It was that word again. Chen Feifei completely flared up. She stubbornly hugged Jean Hauser and refused to let go. "How did I fool around? Brother Hao, how did I fool around? I love you so much. I only love you, but what about you? Why can't you love me? Why can't you look at me? Brother Hao, tell me, what else do you want me to do?" She was so emotional that Jean Hauser couldn't pull her away for a moment. She hugged him and kissed him all over the face without any pattern. Chapter 681. Jean Hauser looked at the door of the lounge and then at Chen Feifei. Chen Feifei had already lost control of her emotions. "Brother Hao, I like you. I just like you. I love you." She was about to kiss his lips again, but he reached out and pulled her away again. "Feifei, calm down." I'm very calm. Chen Feifei held Zhang Hao's face with both hands. I'm your fiancé, but why do you never see me in your eyes? Brother Hao. She couldn't kiss him, and he wouldn't let her kiss him. Chen Feifei was in despair. She reached out and grabbed the front of his shirt. The hurt look on her face and the tears in her eyes made her look even more pitiful. I really love you, Brother Hao. Can't you love me? Do you love me, okay? Zhang Haoze looked at Chen Feifei's face and finally lost his patience. When she pestered him again, he pressed the internal line. Soon, Tang Hua appeared. Ah Hua, Feifei isn't feeling well today. Send her home. Brother Hao. Chen Feifei hooked her arms around Zhang Haoze's neck and refused to let go. I'm not feeling well. I don't want to go home. You know what I mean. Don't think about chasing me away just like that. Zhang Haoze didn't want to talk to her anymore. He waved his hand, and Tang Hua understood. He stepped forward and pulled Chen Feifei's hand. Miss Chen, President Zhang still has a meeting to attend later. You don't want others to see you like this, do you? Chen Feifei stood there without moving, and Tang Hua couldn't really act recklessly. One had to know that she was Qin Yongchang's beloved daughter. Miss Chen, don't make things difficult for President Zhang, right? Zhang Haoze looked at Chen Feifei expressionlessly. Feifei, you can go back first. Chen Feifei bit her lip. She felt that her dignity had been thrown to the ground. She looked at Zhang Haoze and sniffed, forcing herself not to cry. Okay, you don't want to see me. You have something to do later. But you have to go home and have dinner with me today. Otherwise, I won't leave today. Zhang Haoze's brows were tightly knitted. He looked in the direction of the lounge from the corner of his eyes and finally nodded. He agreed, and Chen Feifei finally felt that she was not so embarrassed. She took a step forward and stood in front of him. Brother Hao, I really like you. I promise you that I will work hard for you and become a better version of myself. But before that, you are not allowed to like other women. Did you hear me? After saying that, she tiptoed and kissed Zhang Haoze on the cheek. Zhang Haoze clenched his fists tightly and glanced at Tang Hua. Chen Feifei turned around and walked past Tang Hua. I don't need you to send me off. I'll go back myself. Brother Hao, I'll wait for you. After Chen Feifei left, Tang Hua breathed a sigh of relief. He could roughly guess what was going on, so he glanced at the lounge. Then he looked at Zhang Haoze. He was glad that the person inside was not as mischievous as Chen Feifei. Otherwise, there would be a good show to watch. After Tang Hua left, the office became quiet. Zhang Haoze walked to the door of the lounge. Just as he was about to open the door opened first. Shi Mengwan stood at the door for a long time. She didn't look at him. She walked past him and was about to walk out. Zhang Haoze stopped her. Where are you going? Shi Mengwan looked at him and realized one thing. It was a mistake for her to look for Zhang Haoze today. No, it wasn't just today. Every time she got involved with him, it was a mistake. She walked past him from the other side, and Zhang Haoze grabbed her hand. Where are you going? Shi Mengwan didn't need to stay any longer. Can't I? Her appearance made Zhang Haoze inexplicably panic. He didn't want her to leave just like that. Aren't you going to S province? Will you help me go? Shi Mengwan stared straight at his face. She believed that he wouldn't let her go to S province at all. Zhang Haoze was silent. He indeed wouldn't let her go. Shi Mengwan knew that he wouldn't let her go. He was just keeping her hanging. Zhang Haoze. Shi Mengwan looked into his eyes and bit the tip of her tongue hard, forcing herself not to indulge in his deep eyes. I won't look for you in the future. I won't see you again. You already have Chen Feifei. So, please don't look for me. Her footsteps were firm. Zhang Haoze's heart trembled. He had a feeling that he was about to lose Shi Mengwan. He hugged her from behind and hugged her tightly. Don't go. Shi Mengwan stopped for a while, then she pulled Zhang Haoze's fingers one by one. Zhang Haoze, don't be like this. Give me time, Zhang Haoze. Shi Mengwan suddenly raised her voice and struggled out of his arms. She stood in front of him and stared at his face with a burning gaze. Give you time? Tell me, how much time do I give you? A month? Half a year? A year? How much time do you need? How long do I have to wait before I can stand in front of you openly? Can you answer? She thought of Chen Feifei, whom she couldn't help but open a crack in the door. She didn't have the pride and confidence she had when she went to her studio. That Chen Feifei was a little woman trapped by love. What about her? How much better was she than Chen Feifei? For Zhang Haoze. She also had no dignity and no bottom line. Zhang Haoze was silent. His expression was very solemn. His lips moved, but he didn't say a word. Sure, Mengwan already knew this would be the result. You can't answer. You can't answer at all. So let it be. Zhang Haoze. I don't want to look like I have no dignity, and I don't want to become a lowly woman for love. If you still have a trace of pity for me, please let me go. The coldness and determination in her eyes made Zhang Haoze's eyes flash with gloominess and complexity. He raised his hand and finally lowered it, clenching it into a fist. 1-1. Goodbye. Shi Mengwan turned around and left. Every step she took was very firm. The moment the door opened, she heard Zhang Haoze finally speak behind her. Don't go to S province. It's really not safe. Shi Mengwan's footsteps didn't stop. She left as if she didn't hear anything. She left. Zhang Haoze punched the wall beside him. Tang Hua quickly came in again. Boss? He looked at Zhang Haoze worriedly. Zhang Haoze's back was facing him as he looked at the blue sky outside. After a while, he heard Zhang Haoze's voice. Make the arrangements. Go to Qing City tomorrow. Tang Hua didn't ask further. Yes, I'll make the arrangements now. In the end, Shi Mengwan couldn't go to S province. It was the most tense time for the disaster relief. How could she go there so easily? She went to the Li family's villa a few times, and Li Qinxue was also very worried. However, she also knew that she would only cause trouble if she went. At the critical moment, she could only force herself to calm down. Fortunately, after waiting for 2 days, she finally received news that Su Qingsang was fine. Only then did Shi Mengwan's heart completely relax. Su Qingsang knew that her family in Lin City would be worried about her, so she called them one by one to tell them that she was safe and told them that Hu Jinyao was taking care of her now. Shi Mengwan knew Hu Jinyao's ability. With him around, she believed that she could worry less. After she was relieved, she heard that Su Qingsang had actually chosen to stay in the disaster area as a volunteer doctor. Even Hu Jinyao stayed behind. She sighed in her heart. She really admired Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao now. She couldn't do anything else. After thinking about it, she donated a sum of money to the disaster area. It could be considered as doing something for herself. Nearly a month later, Su Qingsang finally returned from the disaster area. Although she could contact her these days, Shi Mengwan had never been at ease. Fortunately, she had returned safely. Su Qingsang didn't stay in Lin City for long. After staying for a few days, she returned to Rong City. She could tell that after this time, Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao seemed to have become closer. They had suddenly decided to get married. For a long time after they got married, Shi Mengwan was worried that Su Qingsang wouldn't have a good life. Now, it seemed that she could rest assured. She couldn't help but think of herself again. Zhang Haoze seemed to have lost contact with her for more than a month. She was relieved that he didn't come. However, she couldn't hide the disappointment in her heart. She was the one who broke up with him, and she was the one who said that they wouldn't meet again. It was actually good that things were like this now. Shi Mengwan told herself that if she was given some time, she would eventually forget about it. Even though she knew very well that it was very difficult. Time passed by for more than a month. Today, Shi Mengwan's studio welcomed another old acquaintance. Chen Feifei. She looked very different from the last time they met. Her long hair was still loose behind her head, but she was no longer wearing a dress or a suit. Instead, she was wearing a professional suit. She looked a little more mature and less naive. Miss Chen. Good afternoon. Seeing Chen Feifei like this, Shi Mengwan felt a little emotional. Love could make a woman change. Miss Chen, you look good. Really? Thank you. Chen Feifei was in a good mood today. I started to work, and I found that work is quite fun. Shi Mengwan didn't reply, and Qin Feifei didn't need her to. Help me pick out a dress. I'm going to a cocktail party tonight. Okay. Shi Mengwan nodded and brought Qin Feifei to the costume area. The outermost one was her first love, who had won first place in the competition. It's so beautiful. Qin Feifei looked at the dress. I'll take this one. Shi Mengwan was stunned for a moment. Because this dress was for the competition, she wore it last time and brought it back after attending Dixon's banquet. After it was dry cleaned, it had been hanging here as a sample. There are still 2 more in this series. Miss Qin, why don't you pick another set? After all, this set is here as a sample. Can't I sell it as a sample? Qin Feifei liked this set. I think this set looks good. I'll take this one. But Shi Mengwan was a little conflicted. She thought that she had once worn this dress to dance with Zhang Haoze, so she didn't really want to sell it. Chapter 682. It's not about money. Shi Mengwan smiled appropriately. This is the work I won in the competition in France. I didn't intend to sell it. The work that won the prize? In other words, this is the only one? When Qin Feifei heard this, she was even more determined to win. Then I'll take this one. Miss Qin. All right, aren't you guys doing business when you open the door? Qin Feifei looked confused. How can you not do business when you open the door? If you don't want to pay double the price, then I'll pay triple. Is that okay? Shi Mengwan didn't respond. Qin Feifei was a little dissatisfied. What's wrong with you? Aren't I advertising for you by wearing your clothes? When the time comes, more people in your studio will know about it, won't they? Do you know how to do business? Shi Mengwan couldn't argue with Qin Feifei, so she could only take off the clothes and ask someone to wrap them up. Qin Feifei swiped the card and glanced at Shi Mengwan. Miss Shi, the clothes you designed are actually quite good, but I don't think you guys know how to advertise. Next time, just advertise it. Shi Mengwan didn't respond. The studio's popularity was actually quite high now. After winning the award, there were still many online orders. She was wondering if she should hire a few more people. By the way, if you have a new model next time, you can call me. As Qin Feifei spoke, she took out a business card. Shi Mengwan took the business card from Qin Feifei. On it was written the manager of the Chun Corporation's customer service department. After sending Qin Feifei away, Shi Mengwan looked at the empty model and wasn't in the mood to think too much. She asked Xiao Ji to bring a set of clothes for the model to wear. A thought flashed through her mind. If Qin Feifei went to the reception, would Zhang Haoze go? If he did, would he see that dress and think of her? Shi Mengwan, who realized what she was thinking, quickly stopped that thought. You guys have already broken up. She told herself that since that was the case, then it had nothing to do with that person. Not long after she returned to the office, someone came to look for her. To Shi Mengwan's surprise, the person who came was Wan Xianying. Why you here? In fact, after returning from France, Wan Xianying specially came to Lin City to look for her twice. Other than coming to her house to look for her, the messages and calls never stopped. Last time, he said that he had something to do in Lin City. She thought he was just joking. She didn't expect that he would really come. Can I come? Wan Xianying handed the bouquet of roses to Shi Mengwan. This time, it was a bouquet of pink roses. Every time he came to look for her, he would send her flowers. Shi Mengwan looked at the bouquet of flowers and didn't take it for a long time. Wan Xianying, I told you I know that you don't like me, so it's impossible for you to be with me, right? Wan Xianying spoke first, leaving Shi Mengwan speechless. I'm just giving you a bouquet of flowers. You don't have to be so nervous, right? Shi Mengwan watched as he forcefully placed the bouquet of flowers in her hand. She had no choice but to take it. Thank you. You're welcome. Wan Xianying smiled. You don't have to thank me. If you really want to thank me, why don't you accompany me for a meal? Wan Xianying, no matter what, I flew all the way from Rong City to look for you. Shouldn't you show your hospitality as a host? Shi Mengwan couldn't refuse him at all. In addition, the other party was Hu Jinyao's childhood friend. In the end, she nodded. Then wait for me. I'll go change. It's okay. Beautiful women have to make people wait. Wan Xianyang's words made Shi Mengwan feel uncomfortable again. She changed her clothes and came out, but the way Wan Xianyang looked at her was a little strange. His gaze swept across her body, making Shi Mengwan think that there was something wrong with her. She followed his gaze and looked at herself. Very beautiful. His praise made Shi Mengwan feel uncomfortable. Let's go. Let's go. What do you want to eat? Anything is fine. Shi Mengwan wasn't picky about food. Wan Xianyang sighed. It's very difficult for me if you're like this. I'm treating people to a meal, and I'm most afraid of hearing anything like that. Just as Shi Mengwan was a little embarrassed, Wan Xianyang approached her and added, however, beautiful women have special privileges. Shi Mengwan couldn't help but laugh. This Wan Xianyang was a very interesting person most of the time. Wan Xianyang brought Shi Mengwan to Chaoan Courtyard. Shi Mengwan had been here a few times, but she didn't expect Wan Xianyang to be so familiar with this place. Shi Mengwan thought that it would be awkward for a man and a woman to eat alone, but in fact, it wasn't at all. Wan Xianyang was a very humorous person. He talked about some interesting things that happened when he went to Hong Kong to auction antiques. Shi Mengwan wasn't bored listening. He had a good sense of propriety and never said anything too excessive or made any requests. Although he occasionally made a joke or two, it didn't make people feel embarrassed. Shi Mengwan looked at Wan Xianyang and had to admit that he was a very good man. Unfortunately, she didn't have any feelings for him. After dinner, when Wan Xianyang and Shi Mengwan were about to leave, they met an acquaintance. I'll go say hello. Wait for me. Shi Mengwan wasn't surprised that Wan Xianyang had acquaintances in Lin City. However, that person looked a little familiar. Later, she remembered that he seemed to be in an antique business in Lin City. His daughter had once come to her studio to order a dress. Thinking of Wan Xianyang's business, it wasn't strange that he knew him. After exchanging pleasantries with him, Wan Xianyang came back with an apologetic look on his face. Sorry to have made you wait for a long time, right? It's okay. Let's go. After sending Shi Mengwan to the apartment building, Wan Xianyang watched her get out of the car and called out to her. Aren't you going to invite me up for a seat? Shi Mengwan became nervous because of his words. I'm afraid it's not convenient. I'm joking. Wan Xianyang got out of the car and stood in front of her. It's the middle of the night. Even if you let me go up, I'm afraid I won't be able to control myself. Shi Mengwan felt a little embarrassed again. Wan Xianyang, I really... Stop. Today's night is very beautiful to me. You don't have to say those disappointing words anymore. Okay, I won't say it. That's right. Wan Xianyang turned around and picked up a small box from the back seat of the car. This is for you. This isn't appropriate, right? There's nothing inappropriate about it. Just treat it as a thank you for accompanying me to dinner. There's no such logic. You're treating me to dinner, but I still have to accept your gift. Shi Mengwan refused to accept it, but Wan Xianyang stubbornly placed the small box in her hand. Don't worry, it's not a ring. You don't have to be so nervous. Wan Xianyang. Shi Mengwan pushed the box back. You really don't have to do this. I'll be embarrassed if you do this. If you really feel embarrassed, how about you accompany me to a banquet tomorrow? A banquet? Shi Mengwan was stunned. What banquet? Don't be so nervous. Wan Xianyang smiled. It's the Mr. Dong I met today. Tomorrow is his father's 70th birthday. My grandfather has some friendship with him. When he saw me, he invited me to attend. Logically speaking, I should go, so can I trouble you to be my female companion? This isn't appropriate, right? How could that be? I don't think it's inappropriate. Or are you not willing to help me? Wan Xianyang's attitude was too open and aboveboard. Shi Mengwan met the sincerity in his eyes and finally nodded. I promise you. Since Shi Mengwan had promised Wan Xianyang she would naturally prepare well the next day. Before she got off work, she picked out one of the dresses from the series that she had passed the semifinals. The aqua blue gown had a calm color. It was very suitable for her to attend the birthday banquet. Xiao Ji knew that Shi Mengwan was going to attend the banquet, so she was even more excited than herself. She followed the other two assistants of the company and tormented Shi Mengwan. Her long hair was tied up at the back of her head, leaving two strands hanging by her ears, coupled with a pair of high heels of the same color. She looked elegant and imposing. It wasn't time to get off work yet, but Wan Xianying came to pick her up. When he saw Shi Mengwan like this, Wan Xianying's gaze fell on her and didn't move away. I regret it. Wan Xianying stood there with a conflicted expression. I don't want to bring such a beautiful female companion out. I want to hide you. His words made Shi Mengwan's nervousness disappear without a trace. Thank you. You're also very handsome today. Wan Xianying was wearing a white suit today. The bow tie on his chest was dark blue. There was also a faint blue in the pocket on his chest. From this, it looked like the two of them were wearing a couple's outfit. Shi Mengwan felt that it was a little strange, but Wan Xianying was glad that he had chosen this set of clothes today. He was afraid that Shi Mengwan would lose face, so he didn't tease her about it. Let's go. Shi Mengwan was about to walk out, but Wan Xianying stopped in his tracks. He took out the small box from yesterday from his pocket. Opening it, there was a pair of blue diamond earrings inside. Look, don't we have a tacit understanding? The gown you chose is the same color as the gown I chose? As he spoke, he even looked at himself. It wasn't just the color of the earrings that matched, but the clothes also matched. In short, everything matched. Shi Mengwan couldn't answer him. Wan Xianying went forward and was about to put it on for her. There's no need, right? Don't reject me. Wan Xianying went forward and took out the pair of earrings. It really suits you. Just treat it as a thank you gift for accompanying me to the banquet. This person could always find so many reasons. Before Shi Mengwan could refuse, Wan Xianying had already put the earrings on for her. Shi Mengwan couldn't see her own appearance. Wan Xianying took a step back with obvious admiration in his eyes. So beautiful. I really don't want to bring you along anymore. What should I do? Although he said that, Wan Xianying still brought Shi Mengwan to the hotel where the banquet was held. When Shi Mengwan and Wan Xianying entered the banquet hall, there were already a lot of people there. When the two of them came in, they tried their best to keep a low profile, but they still attracted a lot of attention. The man was handsome and the woman was beautiful, but they were unfamiliar faces. They didn't seem to be from Lin City's circle. Wan Xianying's antique shop was in Rong City, but he had been flying all over the world to buy antiques all these years. More importantly, his family had a long history. Although he was young in the antique appraisal industry, he was already very experienced. The host of today's banquet, Old Master Dong, had dealt with Wan Xianying's family a lot, so he naturally knew him. When Old Master Dong's son, Dong Yi, saw Wan Xianying coming over, he immediately came over. He met him yesterday, and he was also the one who invited Wan Xianying to today's banquet. Xianying is here? My dad is talking about you. Dong Yi was from the same generation as Wan Xianying's father, so it was natural for him to call Wan Xianying by his name. Old Master Ching is thinking about me. Wan Xianying noticed that Dong Yi's gaze swept over Shi Mengwan. He smiled. Uncle Dong, this is my female companion, Shi Mengwan. Hello, Uncle Dong. After greeting him, Wan Xianying followed behind Dong Yi to congratulate Old Master Dong on his birthday. Although he came in a hurry, he had prepared a very sincere birthday gift. Old Master, congratulations. After giving the gift, Wan Xianying had a faint smile on his face. I wish Old Master good luck and longevity. You're too polite. Kid from the Wan family, I didn't expect a Yi to not lie to me. You're really in Lin City. Yes, I have something to do. I heard that it's Old Master's birthday, so I shamelessly came over to ask for a drink. Old Master, please don't blame me. Ah, look at this kid's mouth. It's exactly the same as his father back then. That's right. Old Master, don't tease me. When I came, my grandfather asked me to say hello to you. Okay. Also say hello to your grandfather for me. Tell him to come to Lin City to play when he has time. I don't dare to say anything else here, but the air here is pretty good. Okay, I'll definitely tell him. If there's a chance, let grandfather come to Lin City. After Wan Xianying congratulated him, he introduced Shi Mengwan. Old master, this is Shi Mengwan, my friend. Hello, old master. Shi Mengwan was quite generous. I wish old master good health. May you live a long life. Okay. Old master Dong smiled. He looked into the distance. My girl is about the same age as your friend. Kid from the Wan family, take your friend to play. You don't have to accompany an old man like me here. Wan Xianyang said a few polite words and was about to bring Shi Mengwan to the dining table at the side. There was a commotion at the door. Shi Mengwan was taken a step back by Wan Xianyang. With this step back, she faced the entrance of the banquet hall. Naturally, she saw who the people who came in at the entrance were. Zhang Haoze and Chen Feifei. Chen Feifei happened to be wearing that gown. It had to be said that she looked very good in this gown. Chen Feifei's appearance was originally weak and pitiful. The light green made her look even more pure. Zhang Haoze, who was beside her, was dressed in a black suit. He was mysterious and elegant. When the two of them walked in, many people's gazes turned towards them. The two of them were quite famous in Lin City. Moreover, the news of Chen Feifei and Zhang Haoze's engagement had spread. Dong Yi went up to welcome them as usual. Before Shi Mengwan and Wan Xianying could leave, Chen Feifei and Zhang Haoze had already walked over. Shi Mengwan and Zhang Haoze's gazes unexpectedly met in midair. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.